so it was pleasing that it soon warmed up and ended up a rather mild day. I continued to wait for YouTube to start functioning. And as soon as I'm told it's live, lovely. Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to this, the third Chiswick Area Forum in this council year. Thank you very much for joining us, those who've joined us online. I'm Councillor Joanna Biddulph and Chairman of the Area Forum this year. We usually have 4 meetings a year, but the pandemic intervened. We tried for the 4th date, but with elections coming on the 5th of May, with what is known as PERDA starting on the 24th of March, this is the last Chiswick Area Forum this year. PERDA, by the way, is the 6-week period before the formal announcement, between the formal announcement of an election. There's terrible feedback from this point of view. Has everyone else got feedback?
Yes.
Okay, can we sort the sound then, please?
Can I just suggest that everybody who's not speaking just mutes their mic and just unmutes when the chair asks you to?
Nearly everybody is mute already.
I may just mute a few that I can see that aren't.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
So I'll start with that same bit again. PERDA, by the way, is the 6-week period between the formal announcement of an election and polling day, during which there are restrictions on council activities and communications. We're meeting virtually this time to minimise the risks of spreading Omicron and COVID-19. And this is the first time I've chaired an online meeting. And for some of our presenters today, it's their first time presenting virtually too. I hope you'll be forgiving if we struggle a bit. But we do have a technical team with us to help us. In addition, although councillors are visible and presenters will be visible when they are speaking, others attending won't be visible, though we will be able to see names and phone numbers in the attendance list. As some of you know, this forum is in a different format from before. It's more community focused, with a new section, Chiswick Community Matters, for our amazing local voluntary organisations and businesses to explain what they do and how councillors and residents can help. And a new Chiswick Future section, allowing us to look at significant policy areas in more detail. The public forum remains as always and is your chance to ask questions on subjects other than on the agenda. And this time, I think this is still correct, we would very much like your feedback on this meeting. Is there going to be a link, John, in the stream?
No, Councillor. The way people give their feedback would be to go to the agenda, and at the end of the agenda, there's a link to a very short feedback survey.
Lovely, thank you. I'd forgotten that. Thank you very much indeed. And we do hope people will feedback. In addition to this forum, we will also be taking questions after each presentation. So if you have a question, please use the raise hands function. We don't have anything else for you to raise questions. So the raise hands function, which is at the top of the screen, for those of you who haven't used it before, if you click on that, and names will appear numbered. So I'll be able to tell who was first in the queue. So first of all, introductions. In case you don't know us as councillors, we'll introduce ourselves by name, ward and portfolio. So let's go alphabetically. I know Patrick Farr isn't coming. We haven't come to apologies for absence yet, but I won't wait for him. But is Michael Dennis here with us? Mike. Councillor Dennis, if you could just introduce yourself.
Hello, yes. My name's Councillor Dennis. I'm the Chiswick Riverside councillor, along with Sam Hearn and Gabriella Giles. And my portfolio is housing and homelessness.
Thank you. Councillor Giles.
Good evening, I'm Gabriella Giles. I'm a councillor for Chiswick Riverside and my portfolios are the environment and culture.
Thank you. Councillor Gill.
I'm Ranjit Gill. I'm the councillor for Turnham Green Ward along with Joanna Biddulph and Ron Mishisha. And my portfolio is policing and crime. Thank you. Thanks, Ranjit. Councillor Hearn.
Hello, Sam Hearn, one of the 3 councillors for Chiswick Riverside Ward. My portfolio is traffic and transport, and I'm also chair of the Hounslows Pension Board.
Thank you, Sam. And Councillor McGregor.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Chiswick Area Forum. I represent Chiswick Homefields, where I've been representing it for the last 18 years. I'm leader of the Conservative group and therefore leader of the opposition on the Hammersmith Borough Council. And I work specifically in the area of budget and forecasting, planning and revenue and expenditure for the council. That's my portfolio. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Moshiso.
Hi everyone, I'm Councillor Moshiso. I am Councillor for Turnham Green alongside Councillor Bidoff and Councillor Gill. My portfolio is children and young people.
Thank you. And Councillor Todd.
Yeah, hi. My name's John Todd. I'm the Councillor of Chiswick Homefields and my portfolio is finance.
Thank you. And as I said, I'm Councillor Joanna Biddulph, Turnham Green Ward, with Councillor Moshiso and Councillor Gill. And my portfolio is, I'm spokesman on the retail economy. And I set up the Chiswick Shops Task Force with Councillors Patrick Barr, who's not here this evening, and Gabriella Giles. Although we're trying to be much less municipal, we do just have a couple of formalities to go through, if that's all right, including apologies for absence. And I can say that Patrick Barr, Councillor Barr, isn't here this evening. I'm afraid he's having to work late today, and everybody else is with us, so no other apologies. Are there any declarations of interest from councillors?
I suppose I should say that I'm a trustee of the Chiswick Pier Trust, where the RNLI are based. I don't know if that's a conflict of interest, but I'm there as a representative of the council.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? And then any other communications from councillors? Excellent, thank you very much. And I hope it's helpful to introduce ourselves to people who are watching online. So we'll move straight on then to the first item on the agenda of substance, and that is the first session of the Chiswick Community Matters section. And I'd like to welcome Wayne Bellamy of the Chiswick RNLI, the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, who's here to tell us about the charity that saves lives. I don't suppose I'm alone in being very proud to have a lifeboat station here on our wonderful stretch of the river, but also not necessarily knowing exactly what it and its team does. So Wayne, over to you. And just to confirm before you start, is it all right if we take questions after your presentation?
Absolutely. Yeah,
lovely.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks.
Good. Okay, I'll just wait. So evening, everybody. The one thing I suppose is, as much as I think 2 years into Zoom and Teams and all this virtual stuff that we've been having to do, I am finding it's allowing us to see maybe more people than what we would usually get a chance to. So it does have a silver lining, all of this. So thank you for the opportunity. So my name's Wayne. I manage the lifeboat station at Chiswick, and John, I think, is behind the scenes pressing the buttons to advance the slides. So you'll hear me say every moment or two, asking John to just move the slides forward, which are great. And I just want to say, Sam, Gabriella, John, Joe, there's some familiar faces I see on my screen, so it's nice to see you again. I haven't seen some of you now for certainly knocking on 2 years, and it'd be great. We haven't opened up the doors of the lifeboat station yet, but I think we're inching closer to being able to do that. So when we can, it'd be great to see everybody again in person. Good. All right. So John, if you wouldn't mind just advancing a slide forward. Good. Okay, there we go. So our lifeboats on the Thames. We've been around now for 20 years. In fact, 20 years, 2 weeks, 2 days, and 7 hours and 10 minutes. So it was midday on the 2nd of January in 2002 that me and two of my colleagues set all of this up. And we've been pretty busy. 20 years later, my team at Chiswick is now getting close to about 100 people. Many of them are people who crew the lifeboats. A few of them are staff. Most of them are volunteers. And then I've also got another sort of 25 or 30 people in our team that do shoreside activity with fundraising, with youth education, hosting visits to the station, and very importantly, fundraising and water safety events and activity, and trying to stop people from getting in trouble in the first place. So I've got about, I don't know, 8 or 9 slides that we're going to go through, and these are just stories, and all they are, when I say we don't want people to get in trouble, we try to stop them getting in trouble in the first place, but then we're also there for the rescue bit as well. So they're both important pieces of work for us. Obviously, the bright orange boats are what everyone knows us for, and that is, you know, very much our day job. But it's all about stopping people from getting into danger, because in many cases, even with a very effective rescue, sometimes we don't save everybody. Okay, and getting that word out and trying to teach people what some of the causes are, especially for a lot of the people that are on our call this evening, because you're all locals. And it's really helpful if you know, if I get a chance, just to share with you a few basic things so you know what fundamentally leads to the emergencies around us. Okay, John, if you could just go ahead a slide, please. All right, so you'll all know the RNLI, the lifeboat station at Chiswick, is part of a network of lifeboat stations that is all around the UK and Ireland, and the Channel Islands, Guernsey and the Isle of Man as well. We have 238 lifeboat stations, and we also have a lifeguarding service on around about 280 beaches, most of those being seasonal across the summer months. We have about 4,500 people that do rescue, and we have about 40,000 people in our organization, principally volunteers, who do all of those things that I talked about earlier across all of the communities in the UK. Now, I love this picture, this little map, for a couple of reasons. So the orange dots are rescues we've done, and the blue dots are where those people live. Now, it's pretty obvious. You can see the population centres of London and Birmingham and Manchester and Liverpool and Glasgow and the Tyne and, you know, around Newcastle and Sunderland and Edinburgh. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to realize most of the people that get in trouble are the centres of population are where our biggest opportunity for getting prevention messaging out to is. So when we spend a lot of time talking to people in London, from London, about something like beach safety, the first thing people always come back to us and say, well, why are you talking to us about swimming between the flags on a lifeguarded beach? Because we don't have any beaches on the Thames. Well, we do actually. We don't lifeguard them, but we do have beaches. But equally, when you go to the beach in your summer holidays or when you're away around the coast, it's important that you carry those messages with you. And it's really helpful if we do it for adults. It's really helpful if we do it for people engaged in various water sport activities and fishing and boating. But it's especially important with children. And we have found, certainly locally, we have a very active program for youth education, the under 18s. And we found that we certainly find that they are one of the best routes through to their parents. And there's many, many stories of children coming home from school, having had one of our people do a session as part of their lessons, or even the teachers as part of their lessons. And they'll be telling their parents about swim between the flags, look for a lifeguarded beach, and those sort of things. So that just gives you a bit of a picture around how everything works across the UK. So John, if you wouldn't mind just skipping ahead to our next slide. All right, so for those of you who've been in or near or by Chiswick Pier, where we are at Chiswick, this is Echo 08, Dougie and Donaby. This is one of the 2 lifeboats that I have at Chiswick. So this is what in RNLI lingo we call an E-class lifeboat, and there's only 4 of them. So remember I said we have 280 lifeboat stations and 238 lifeboat stations and 280 beaches. So we have a presence in over 500 places. We've got over 500 lifeboats, but this E-class, we only have 4 of them. And 2 of them are at Chiswick and 2 of them are at our next door neighbour down by Waterloo Bridge at Tower. So we only use them on the Thames in the centre of London. They're specifically designed to work here, to work in this environment, and they are perfect for what we do. They're the fastest lifeboat that we have in the RNLI fleet, and you'll see that they're they're basically an ambulance that floats, but they can do all sorts of stuff with towing boats, with running searches, with navigating in zero visibility, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So designed for the Thames, works on the Thames, and the funding cost of them, they were about 500 grand a piece. And like I said, I got 2 of them at Chiswick. So £1 million worth of lifeboat. One of them was funded by a challenge that Ross Braun from Formula One did for us. And then the second one, this one here, Dougie and Donna B. This was a legacy that these people left to us. Dougie was a merchant seaman who later worked for the PLA, and they didn't have any next of kin, so they left their estate. They left their estate to us, and we were some of you, I think, on the call might have been around in September of 2012 when we did the naming ceremony for this at Chiswick Pier, and it was a really special day. And our plans are, we've had it in service now at Chiswick for 10 years. My hope is that we'll be able to get at least another 10 out of it. So it should be around for quite some time. Okay, next slide, please, John. All right, so this is Chiswick Pier. And for any of you who are from that part of Chiswick and Hounslow, this will be a familiar low water site. In fact, this was low water Neeps, not low water Springs. And there's a big difference between the two. The biggest difference being how much the water comes in and how much the water goes out. So in a lunar month, in 28 days, we'll have 2 weeks of spring tides and we'll have 2 weeks of neap tides. Spring tides are bigger, neap tides are smaller. So the Thames is tidal. It's very tidal. In fact, the tidal range at Chiswick through Hounslow can, at certain times of the year, be up to 8 meters. And that's the first of 3 things. There's 3 principal things that make the Thames, make the water in the Thames different. Some would say, some people who want to be dramatic would say it's more dangerous. I'm not comfortable saying that. There's more risk involved and there's more stuff to be aware of. It has a different dynamic to what people might be used to around the beaches and around normal city rivers that only flow in one direction. So the first of the 3 things that makes the Thames very different is that it's tidal. It goes up and down as the tide comes in and as the tide goes out. And the amount that it goes up and down will range between 6 meters and 8 meters every tide, and a tide takes it around about 12 hours. So this is low water neap. It's not all the way out, but it's pretty low. And then, John, if you could just skip ahead to the next slide, this was 4 hours later. Okay, so that's the tide flooding or coming in, and that takes usually around about 4.5 hours, sometimes a bit quicker, sometimes a bit slower, but around about 4.5 hours. Now, that flood tide, that rising tide phenomenon on the coast would take 6.5 hours or 6 hours and 20 minutes, as it would around most places in the world, actually. But in West London, it takes 4.5. And this is the first of the big things, the big 3, that make the Thames in West London particularly different, is the speed with which the tide rises. Okay, it catches out, and for any of you who follow us on social media, you will have seen all through lockdown, all the people that we were getting stranded by the rising tide on Chiswick 8 or trapped on the foreshore, or dogs going after ducks and us having to rescue them. It was really, really busy. We were as busy in lockdown as what we normally are. It was almost one of our busiest years ever, but the type of jobs that we were doing was very different than what we would have usually seen. Okay, so the first of the big thing is the rise and fall of the tide. Second big thing is water temperature. So the Thames in West London is 100% fresh water. Even though the tide goes in and out, it never comes in from the North Sea far enough to bring salt water with it. So it's 100% pure fresh water. That does 2 things. It's less saline. There's less salt in it, means you're less buoyant. Okay, so that's the second thing. A person is less buoyant in fresh water than what they are in salt water. And for any of you that have ever seen pictures of, let's say, something like the Black Sea or the Dead Sea, where you get in the water and you float really high, well, the Thames is the total opposite of that. you float really low. Okay, the third of my big three is water temperatures. The sea around the coast of the UK, the average sea temperature around the coast of the UK is about 14 degrees. It will fluctuate a little bit, maybe 1 degree up and down, and it might get a little bit warmer on a hot sunny day in a shallow beach. But generally speaking, it's around about 13, 14. It doesn't change seasonally because of ocean currents coming up from the tropics. The Thames does, and it changes significantly. Right now today, and for most of the last week, because you know it's been cool out right now. Right now, the river temperatures flowing past Chiswick have been in the region of 5 to 6 degrees. In the summer, we'll see the water temperatures climb into the low 20s. Okay, that's really important because it directly affects survivability of a person who winds up in the water. If they're wearing a life jacket or a buoyancy aid, brilliant, but most of the people who wind up in the river aren't. And the cold water leads to cold shock, which is a physiological response, totally involuntary physiological response to your body, and you can't swim, your body cools, and you begin to shut down, and ultimately you drown. And when it's cold, like right now, that will happen in minutes. Certainly, if the sudden cold shock hasn't got you, the exposure to the cold water would probably get you in 10 to 12 minutes. So all of that leads to why our lifeboat stations on the Thames operate differently than any of those 238 I talked about at the beginning. So we have four lifeboat stations on the Thames. There's ours at Chiswick, there's one west of us at Teddington, the one I mentioned earlier down at Tower, and then there's one further down at the estuary in Gravesend. All of those lifeboat stations are designed, are positioned and configured to be able to reach casualties within 15 minutes. And in fact, from Chiswick, our normal response times are about 8 to 10. To make that happen, the station is fully manned 24 hours a day. Okay, so we've got staff and volunteers who do 12-hour shifts, and the crew launches in about 90 seconds. Before I go skip to the next slide, there was a couple of hands that have gone up, so I'll just take quick questions. Sam, your hand is up.
Is that the end of your presentation then, Wayne?
No, I've got a couple of more slides to do.
Oh.
But I saw the hands go up, so I thought I better just stop and check to make sure like my audio is still working or something.
Okay, yeah, no, I think that's fine. I clicked mine on by accident. I don't know about Sam, but
I can wait till the end. I'm fine.
Super. I think I've got a couple more, just a couple of jobs from pictures.
Sure.
All right, so the big three, the water goes up and down, the water temperatures, and the current and what have you that I mentioned as well. Good. Okay, John, if you wouldn't mind skipping to the next slide for us. Okay, a few examples of just some of the jobs that have happened. This was a person who fell down onto the foreshore. And what's great about being on a lifeboat is you're able to get into places where other people can't. And you'll see from the picture that we've got ambulance and fire brigade and everyone's up on the top, but they can't get down to the bottom where we are. And this was a case where the tide was coming in. So this person was fully spinal because of the fall that they'd had. And the tide rises about 1 foot every 10 minutes. So you can estimate looking at that we've got about 2 feet of tidal rise before the person and our casualty is going to start getting wet. So we have about 20 minutes to be able to take care of them, to deliver all the first aid and the clinical requirement, and then evacuate them rapidly before the water starts to take over. Good, John, next slide, please. Okay, Hammersmith Bridge. This isn't what closed it, just to reassure all of you. So this was boat race day in 2006. This was a passenger boat that had, it was right after the boat race had finished. The tide was still flooding in, the tide was still rising, and the boat had mechanical failure. And the flood tide, the incoming tide, swept it onto Hammersmith Bridge. It got pinned underneath the bridge, and the tide was continuing to rise, and we were really worried because with the boat broadside in the tide, it now runs the risk of capsizing, being rolled and capsizing. There were 6 passengers who were in wheelchairs on this boat, as well as 6 attendants and a couple of crew. So we got them all off. Again, we were there because the station's fully manned all the time, and on boat race day, We operate both of the lifeboats we've got at Chiswick on busy days. We'll operate both boats. Boat race day is one of those boats, or one of those days, sorry. So we had both boats run down to this, and we were able to get them off and get them to a place of safety. But that was a real. We haven't had another Marchioness in, what is it, 32 years, I suppose. And this was almost the closest we ever came to having one. That would have been horrible. But like I said, we got them all off safe, so that was good. John, next slide, please. Okay, rowers. So this is our bread and butter work. This is the Black Boy down at Putney Embankment. It's an interesting story. So there's a few things with this. So you'll always hear me, you'll hear us talk about people wearing life jackets, but we know rowers don't because it interferes with their ability to use the oars. But the cocks, and all the coaches and the tin fish that operate with the rowing community, they do wear life jackets. So this was a head race. It was one of the dozen or so head races that happen on the Tideway every year. And this was a crew who had competed. They'd finished the race, and then they'd turned to Putney, and they were coming back up to UL at Strand on the Green. And they weren't paying attention anymore. They'd finished the race. They were winding down, cooling down, putting on their jumpers to stay warm, and they weren't paying attention. And the tide caught them, turned the broadside, put them onto the Black Boy broadside, and the boat broke in two. And you can see from the pictures, obviously I can't point what I normally would with this picture, but you can see half of the boat sticking up, the wood boat sticking up in one end, and the other half of the broken boat is another, and all 9 girls were in the water. And the rowing community always talks about their mantra behind not wearing life jackets is stay with the boat. Well, quite frankly, in this particular episode, that wasn't possible, and because people aren't wearing life jackets, so a proper life jacket, if you're unconscious, it will turn you face up so you can still breathe. And you can see all these oars that are up in the air, and I do worry. I mean, it didn't happen, but I do worry about, should one of those oars have come down across someone's head, would they become unconscious and then possibly drowned? It didn't happen, but that was a really close call. And the last thing with this photograph that I always find interesting is the one person who was wearing a life jacket, the cocks in the bottom right-hand corner of the picture, their life jacket hasn't inflated. So it didn't work. And that is a big problem that we used to have in the rowing community. We've done a lot of work ourselves and the rowing community itself, and a lot of the partners with the PLA and the Thames Regional Rowing Council and various others, and life jacket effectiveness has improved dramatically. Probably about 8 years ago, when we really began the proper work on this, we were seeing the average failure rate across the rowing community in 75, 78%. We had one school that had a 100% failure rate on the life jackets when they were inspected. And then 5 years later, so about 2 years ago, we did that same assessment piece of work. Over 2,000 life jackets were tested, and there was a 100% pass rate, which was great. So what it shows is everything that everybody is doing is working. But what it's reminded us, and COVID taught us this when we did all the return to boating work, is the rowing community is generational. There's a lot of turnover within it because a lot of it is based around school and university. So there's new people coming into it. 20% of the community is new every year. So all of that work, all of that education, all of that training needs to be continuous. You can't just do it once. You have to keep doing it every single year. Good, John, next question for us. Next slide for us, please. All right, so this is one of the things where all of you might be able to help me. So this isn't in Hounslow, you'll be happy to know. But this was a riverside redevelopment that was done a short time ago, and if anyone knows the site, it's in front of the Blue Boat, the pub, just downriver, Hammersmith on the North Shore. So as part of the redevelopment, the developer had to raise the flood defense to the 1,000-year level, which is quite common. And then they chose, because of the risk of people winding up going over the wall and in the river, they thought, let's put a railing on it to keep everybody safe. And they thought, wouldn't it look great if we angle the railing, because that will just make it look really cool. But you'll see, and this was a very quiet day with the 2 or 3 people that are there, the way they've chosen to design the railing has created the exact risk that they intended to eliminate, because it now encourages, it's this perfect backrest, and it now encourages everyone to climb up over the railing with their pint in their hand, sit on the wall, and not have any edge protection or anything to stop them from falling in the river. What's also interesting in this particular redevelopment, many years ago, the local authorities, and Hounslow would have done this too, they fitted ladder egress points up river walls where it's either revetted or embanked, so that people who were in the water could get out. When the developer raised this particular wall to the 1,000-year flood level, they didn't raise the ladders. So you can get the ladder, you can climb up to it, but it's 3 feet short of the top and you can't get off of it. Okay, so the duty of care for all of these lies with the riparian landowner and the local authorities. And this is a piece of work with what I call foreshore safety, public rescue equipment, and that riverside risk assessment. We've been doing it local authority by local authority, working with partners, and we've got a lot of experience with it. We've done most of the central London boroughs now, and for anyone, the next time you're in anywhere through central London along the river, you'll see the great big orange life buoys that have the local authorities name, the lifeboat's name. It'll have a call 999 message, and it will have a location postcode and probably a grid reference there as well. That program, that risk assessment, we want to continue to carry it out to West London as soon as we can. And if anyone within the local authority wants to help me, or at least steer me in the right direction to begin to do that, that would be fantastic. John, next slide, please. Good. All right. So that's question time now.
Lovely.
So,
thank you.
Joe, can I just let you can probably see the screen better than I can with who's putting their hand up.
Yes, no,
So,
I'll help you with that, Wayne. That's fine.
Super, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. That was incredibly revealing, and particularly the prevention point, which reminded me of days when I had a cousin who had a boat on the Thames, and we regularly invited friends to join us at the weekends. A couple came with 2 small boys. We asked them to put on life jackets, and the parents said, "Oh no, don't worry, our kids can swim." We carried on insisting that they should put on life jackets because we knew that the Thames was a dangerous place to be. But thank you very much. So Sam had his hand up. Sam, this is Councillor Hearn, sorry.
That's fine. I think Wayne and I are on first name terms. So. As you go up and down the river, and you may not want to answer the question, so I quite understand, but as you go up and down the river and you're looking at these flood protection walls, do you think they look in a good state of protection? Because you do have a very clear view of these walls, and some residents don't think those walls are either being monitored or looked after all that well.
Is this their ability to defend Hounslow from a flood? Is that the protection you're asking about?
Well, that would be a useful question to be asking, and for you to have a view on. I mean, they were obviously built some time ago, and the world has changed. Yep. So that would be useful, but also just the state of repair, because you're having a good hard look at those as you motor by.
Yep. The best people to ask this question of is the Environment Agency, because they're the ones that carry the statutory duty for the flood protection, and they do monitor all of the walls. Or at least my understanding is that they monitor all of the wall infrastructure. This recently, we were recently reminded of how seriously they take this when everything was happening around Hammersmith Bridge. Because there was a risk of a bridge collapse, they were worried about the bridge collapsing and breaching the flood defenses. So it's if you want a contact within the EA, then let me know, because he's one of the volunteers on my crew, and that's his day job, is the flood defense stuff.
You're mute, Sam.
Thank you. That's brilliant, Wayne. The second question is most people don't know, but we down upstream we have Mogden Sewage Works, and we've been having some problems recently. They seem to be having some mechanical failures, and there is more effluent coming into the river. And today we've had notification of sludge coming into the river. Is that a problem, as the river is your working environment? Is that a problem for you or the people you have to pull out of the river? The fact that you've got this stuff coming in?
Yeah. Yep, it is. And it is for, so our crew hygiene protocol is much more enhanced here than, let's say, what we would do it somewhere on the South Coast, because the water quality that we're dealing with is very different than salt water that washes up on the beaches. So how our hygiene routine in the station needs to be different because of that, and our PPE, the way we use, care for, and decontaminate protective equipment is different, and we've got more work to do. For those of you who are a little bit closer to the Chiswick Pier house and lease situation, we have to do some investment to create some space and capability for not only the kit, but the ability to segregate and clean the kit and keep people safe. That's number one. And then you say about casualties. So generally, Sam, anyone who ingests, if they've ingested water to the point where they were coughing, we would be strongly recommending they go to hospital for at least an assessment, if not a period of observation. And the risk is bacterial infection in your lungs. So the cough and coughing up the water, even if it's only been a sudden immersion, but if the person has coughed up river water, that's a big clue that they've had stuff in their lungs that might create a problem for them a few days later.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Wayne.
Okay.
Thank you. And I see Councillor Giles's hand is up.
Yeah, I've actually got two questions. And to that point, obviously, we know that with the Thames Tideway Tunnel, there will be cleaner water in aspects of the river. But do you think that will make kind of areas in Chiswick safe to swim in a way that's kind of may have been advertised?
I know quite a bit about the Tideway Tunnel because they're a group, and they're excellent. They've been a lovely group to have been working with for the last 10 years, and they take all the river safety stuff and everything. They've been a model of how a partner like that should be. So I'm going to sing their praises. The Tideway Tunnel project diverts sewage. The westernmost point is Hammersmith. That's the last connection site. So any sewage being discharged into the river west of Hammersmith will continue after the Tideway Tunnel becomes operational.
Yes, so as Councillor Hearn said, Mogden sewage still will be a kind of a contributor to the state of the water quality in Chiswick. And then you had a bit of a call to action. So if people want to get involved in supporting you on your project, how's the best way that they can contact you or the RNLI?
The first step would be to get the political support from the local authority, and the local authority, as we have done Southwark and Greenwich and Lambeth and Lewisham and all the others, is if the local authority wants to come on side with us, and then together, because we can do bits that the local authority can, the local authority can do bits that we can't, but together we can. And it's about assessing the risk of the foreshore and then making sure the proper public rescue equipment is in place, because that responsibility, and I know this is a Hounslow call, but I have the same calls with Richmond upon Thames and Kingston and Hammersmith and Fulham as well. The local authority is the one who carries the duty of care for the public rescue equipment along the river. So unless it's privately owned land. So we're here to help. But the statutory duty lies with the local authority, and there's a funding requirement, but it's tiny. The life rings that we've done through central London that we've placed about every 400 meters, the last time we the last time we did pricing numbers, they were only about 30 quid a piece. So it's not a big funding commitment for the impact that it delivers.
And aside from the local authorities, are there any other organisations that you're working with, or is this predominantly spearheaded by the RNLI?
On this particular project, we've been working a lot with TfL and London River Services, and then the respective local authorities. And it's a program that we have been doing for many years, and it's a national program, and this is our local version of a national program.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Wayne. I'm actually dropping you an email as we speak.
Cool. Thank you, Gabriella.
Cheers. No worries. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you for everything you do.
Yes. Councillor Gill next.
Oh, thank you. I think my question has already been answered. Councillor Giles just asked the question, but anyway, since you've asked me to come on, I just want to thank Mr. Ballaby for such wonderful information about the river, and especially the three points that you raised. I think that was brilliant, and also the rise and fall of the river and the temperature. I think that's really important, and I think you do a great job, so thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Todd.
Yeah, hi Wayne, I haven't seen you for years. I'm really shocked when you say, or appear to be saying, you haven't approached Hounslow. I'm involved with the Barnes Bridge project, and safety has been one of the major factors there. And you mentioned in particular one of your, I think that you install them a booth which is near Chiswick Pier, which shows the location in technical terms. Yeah. How is Hounslow deficient?
So the public rescue equipment project we've been running, John, we started it where the greatest risk was, which was central London, which is why we started with Greenwich and then moved to Southwark and then got Lambeth on board. COVID paused it. So it's a piece of work that we're now picking back up post-pandemic. The next two local authorities, based on risk, the next two local authorities on my list are Hounslow and Richmond upon Thames.
Okay, that's very clear. Thank you, Wayne.
Thanks, John. Do any of our later presenters have any questions they'd like to ask? Murray or Dean or Grant or David or Combis? No? Okay. Anybody? I can't see any more hands up, so I'm assuming that members who are watching online also don't have any questions, but you've got a minute now to put your hand up if you'd like to ask one. And while you're thinking about doing that, may I ask you, Wayne, two questions. What made you set up the Chiswick RNLI 20 years ago, and how many hours and days it was? And
Councillor Biddulph, there is one hand up if you go down the list. Combis.
Oh, yes, Combis. Okay, Combis.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah. So Combis is presenting later.
Hello, everybody. I'm Combis. I have a shop on Turnham Green Terrace. It is one of the subjects that I'm going to talk about later, but I wanted to ask about the sewage. We have a huge sewage problem in Chiswick. It's a smell that pops up on a weekly basis. So since you were on that subject, I don't know if you knew of this problem and if there were any solutions there.
Me personally, no, not that particular type of nuisance. No, that's not something that I'm involved in.
Right.
Just its effect on the Thames. Maybe we can pick that up with Combis later, unless any. Yes, would that be all right if we come back to you? That would be great.
Thank you.
Joe, I have a response to that.
Okay,
but
right.
Maybe it's worthwhile kind of elaborating. So from time to time, Thames Water have should we say, evacuated stuff into the Thames. They're not supposed to do it. It's illegal, and they have incurred fines as a result of it. And there is a massive initiative that's being done to make sure that doesn't happen in the future. Cambis, if you'd like any further information, I'm more than happy to follow up on that in via email and give you more information as a result.
Thank
I
you.
think it's, from what I understood from Conbee's question, it's about the smell that is away from the Thames. It's up here in our roads.
Okay, that I misunderstood then,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
yes,
that's
but it's all.
the way I understood it as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
right.
So
In premises and out on the road. It's
Yes.
used, and the sewage comes up, so I don't know where the problem is.
Okay. Well,
Somewhere.
we'll pick that up with you for sure.
Joe, may I ask you just to repeat your question again for me? So it's fresh in my mind.
Yes, it was 2 actually, although I'm very conscious that we're overspending the time and I'm now doing it myself. What made you set up the Chiswick RNLI 20 years ago? And the other thing is purely practical, and I don't know if other people have asked themselves this question as well, but how did you get the person up from the rising tide situation, take him or her away from that to the rescuers above? Are you going above, just if you could just
out by boat. We do it out by boat. So spinal board and stretcher.
Yeah.
So they get it's a fully spinal situation. So the safest way to deal with them is spinal board and basket stretcher, and then we just carry it out to the boat and we carefully put it in the boat and then we land them back. Usually we only have, in all of West London, we only have 4 places where we transfer people to ambulance, and Chiswick Pier is one of those 4.
I see. So the rescuers there, in that case, it was nearer Hammersmith, would have to quickly get to Chiswick Pier to meet you when you'd taken the person away on the boat.
We do. So the only places, and it's a very short list, that we can transfer we use the phrase, we use the term big sick. So when someone's properly unwell, we will do the transfer at Richmond, which is fine if it's high tide and the lock's open. But otherwise, everything from Richmond Lock and Weir all the way down to Chiswick Pier will come back to Chiswick Pier. And then everything downriver from Chiswick, probably to about Harrods or the milepost, thereabouts, will come back to Chiswick Pier as well. So there's a good 6 or 7 miles of river where all of those casualties come back to Chiswick Pier and get transferred there.
Okay.
And then the next point downriver that we use is Putney Pier. And then after that, it's Cadogan Pier down in Chelsea. So there's not too many places where the setup, the infrastructure, is sufficient for us to safely be able to transfer someone into the ambulance.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay. And like I said, Chiswick Pier, I would say probably a good half of the people that we transfer to ambulance, we do so at Chiswick Pier. Now, your first question was what made us set this up? Was that why did the RNLI take the decision to do it, or was that why did I personally choose to be involved in doing it?
You personally.
So this is the Wayne story. So I grew up on the water on the west coast of Canada. I joined the Coast Guard Auxiliary as a volunteer, like all of the people in maritime search and rescue. Almost all of us start out as volunteers. I started out as a volunteer as a teenager, and the Coast Guard Auxiliary, the Coast Guard in Canada, had a program when while you were in university doing your studies, they'd pay you for your 3 months in the summer to go do rescue boats. So I was a volunteer already, and then rescue boats became my summer job. And then once I left university, my real job became in the airline industry, and that airline industry moved me all over the world, through Asia, Southeast Asia, all across Canada and the States, and then ultimately Heathrow. And in 1996, when I moved to Heathrow, I tried to join the RNLI because that's what I wanted to do. But the nearest lifeboat station to me was Brighton. And that was a little bit too far for pagers. So when I heard about the boats coming onto the river in 2001, when the RNLI lifeboats were about to get introduced to the Thames in 2001, I expressed an interest, saying I wanted to volunteer 5 years ago and I couldn't, but can I now? And we wound up having a bit of a conversation, and I wound up leaving the airline business and joining the RNLI as a member of staff. And with 2 other people, we joined about 4 or 5 months before it went live, and got the boat, got the places, got the people, and then we went live on the 2nd of January in 2002.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for a really interesting presentation and so much information that I think has opened it up for an awful lot of people who have been listening.
Thank you for asking me along.
Thank you for coming, and please will you thank you to you for what you're doing, and I don't know how you convey thanks to the rest of your team, but if you could from us collectively, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Wayne.
And so now we move on to the second Chiswick Community Matters session, and a question that is in most of our minds, I'm sure: what is happening with Empire House? Well, this evening we're joined by Dean Clifford, who's one of the directors of Great Marlborough Estates, the new owner of Empire House, to tell us about the future of Empire House. I'd just like to add that as soon as I found out in July 2020 that Great Marlborough Estates was buying Empire House from Lend Lease, I emailed to ask if we could talk, and to my very great surprise, received a reply almost immediately. Grant Lipton, who's here as well this evening, another director, Dean and I spoke, I think within a week of me emailing, and our discussion showed a very high level of genuine interest in Chiswick and our community. So I'll just hand over to Dean and he can tell us more. Thanks, Dean.
Councillor Biddulph. I'm going to try and share my presentation now. So if you just give me one moment, please, I can start. So hopefully you can see this presentation on your screen.
Yes.
So firstly, thank you for your kind invitation to attend tonight's forum. As Councillor Biddulph has just said, we've been in fairly regular contact with her, and I think it was at your suggestion, Councillor Biddulph, that it would be useful if we could provide an update on Empire House development site and provide some information to the forum on our proposals. It's clearly a very prominent site on Chiswick High Road, which has been dormant for many years. And as you will have seen, if you've recently passed by, we're very excited and pleased to confirm that the development is proceeding and moving forward. So I thought it would be useful just to very briefly tell you a little bit about us and explain who we are and what we do. So we are Great Marlborough Estates, as Councillor Biddulph has said. We acquired the site back in September. Myself and Grant Lipton, we established Great Marlborough about 15 years ago. We collectively have, as a team, well over 50 years of residential experience in London, and London is really what we focus on. So it's really the key areas of London that we get to know, really concentrate on. And we are very much opportunity driven. So that means we do some large schemes and we do some smaller schemes as well. And so to give you an example of some of our track record, if you see, hopefully you can see where my cursor is moving around the screen at the moment. That was a notable project in our portfolio. So that is known as Regent's Crescent and Regent's Park, and we were involved in the in securing planning for and the redevelopment of a Grade 1 listed John Nash Terrace Crescent into 67 high quality apartments and 9 mews houses at the rear, as an example of the type of heritage projects that we have been involved with. Beneath that, there is a project that we completed about a year and a half ago, which is on Langham Street, which is in Fitzrovia, which was a Grade 2 listed building, a series of collection of buildings which we have, which used to be an office building, and we've converted into apartments with some retail units on the ground floor. And then on the right hand side, where my mouse is now, as an example of where we have experience of very large projects. So there is in the heart of Vauxhall, which is the where the large gyratory that runs around Vauxhall. So we have secured planning permission for a very large scheme, which was designed by Zaha Hadid Architects to create, in effect, a new town centre for Vauxhall, and it provides a mix of uses from hotel to offices to residential and retail at the ground floor. So that's a little bit about us, and a little bit about some of the notable projects that we've completed and are involved with. So turning to Chiswick. So just as a starting point, we have an excellent track record of developing and completing complicated schemes. We've got a very experienced professional team on board for this project. We're using a Sale Architecture, Rambol Engineering, Millier on the interior design, and Townsend on the landscaping. And so we're really excited that works have commenced on site in order to make this a reality. Just trying to get to the next slide. So here are some images of what we are looking to create. We believe it'll be a very exciting addition to Chiswick High Road. The image on the left is of the ground floor, which will be creating around about 9,000 square feet of retail space on those two sides across both of those parts, and we have flexibility to split up each side as required. At the moment, we're not actively seeking an occupier at the moment, but we've had discussions in the past with Councillor Biddulph about that, and clearly the nature of retail and the nature of high streets seems to be evolving and moving at a very rapid pace. And so as we get closer to completion of the development, we are very hopeful that we will secure some interesting and positive occupiers for the area as a whole. So these are some further CGIs of what we are looking to create, and the one on the left is of the townhouses. So there are 4 townhouses that we're looking to develop at the rear of the site, and on the right hand side, that is the rear of Empire House, which at the moment obviously Essex Place feels like a slightly unloved cut through, and it's an area that we are focusing on very heavily in order to create some really interesting and pedestrian friendly public realm at the rear, so it actually feels like a very nice and welcoming thoroughfare rather than a slightly unloved and back route perhaps into Sainsbury's, which is, I think, how it's probably felt for many years. Looking at the site as a whole, I'll use my mouse just to highlight the areas that we are developing. So this is Empire House just here. This will create 66 apartments on the front just here. Behind there is a new block which will be built. That is called Stoll House. We've named that after Sir Oswald Stoll, who was obviously the creator of the empire as it was, and a notable philanthropist. And that will provide 46 apartments just here. And the CGI that I showed you just earlier, which was of the townhouses, there are 4 townhouses along here. And then finally, on this section just here where my mouse is, which is really at the junction of Acton Lane and Essex Place, that is another block just here, which is called Adelaide House, which was Sir Oswald's mother. That was her name. And that's to create 21 apartments just here. 16 of those are shared ownership, and there's 5 private apartments there, which are effectively in line with the planning permission that was granted. So just going on to the next slide, they are the scheme will predominantly provide 1 and 2 bedroom homes. There are a small selection of 3 bedroom homes, so that's 3 bedroom houses, and a very small selection of apartments which will also be 3 bedrooms. And that again is working along the lines of the planning permission that was granted a few years back under the guise of the control of Lend-Lease. We've been working very hard on how the scheme internally should also look and feel. So we're looking to create very much a contemporary look and feel, which is, in our opinion, modern yet relaxed, and we believe is reflective of its surroundings. We've worked hard to refresh the environmental credentials of the development as well, because we're mindful that the development was consented a number of years ago. So in terms of its green credentials, we are looking to put the energy centre, which will be the main energy centre for Empire, Stoll and the Mews houses within Stoll House. And we're using air source heat pumps to reduce carbon emissions. We're also putting solar panels on top of Adelaide House to try to make it as clean as possible. We're also providing over 200 cycle spaces on site, because it is predominantly there are a very, very small number of car parking spaces. So really, it's predominantly a cycle-based scheme. We've also upgraded the fire strategy, so things like sprinklers throughout. We've incorporated a new firefighting lift in Empire House. So we're really trying to bring it up to the latest requirements and really make it fit for people to enjoy and to call their home. So the other area that I was just discussing earlier was about the landscaping. So we are looking to make some really significant landscaping improvements to Essex Place to make it feel just very much more pedestrian friendly. It's not a particularly friendly cut through. So we have Townsend, who are very noteworthy landscape designers who have really proposed a very good urban greening solution for this area, and we believe that it will be a really positive addition to certainly this little enclave. Moving forward, and I know that obviously the site, as I say, has been dormant for many years, and what people are very mindful of is, well, what's happening, when's it going to happen, etc. So at the moment we are going through all of the groundworks on site. So for those of you who might be construction knowledgeable, we're piling on site at the moment and doing all the groundworks. And in effect, what we're looking to undertake is a series of completions for each of the buildings over the course of next year, with the last one being Empire House, which will be in Q4 of next year. We are looking to start marketing and sales probably around about March time. And so we're working through all of that at the moment. We're looking to sell locally to start with, as we want to offer those in the area the opportunity first, really, and we feel quite strongly about that. And obviously, if anybody on the forum on this video call is interested, please feel free to contact us. We're always very happy to discuss any of the apartments or homes. So, but at the moment, we haven't released any prices, and we're just working through that at the moment to finalise and to really just sort of, get all of that sorted out. But at the moment, as I say, we're working through that. We are looking to establish a little marketing suite, which will be one of the retail units very close to Turnham Green itself. So we're working through that at the moment. And just to give you a little idea, these are some models that we have had commissioned. So they will be in the marketing unit. The larger one will be in the marketing unit, and the smaller one will probably be with one of the agents that we have appointed to market. So just to keep it nice and brief, thank you everybody for listening, and happy to answer any questions that anybody may have. So yes, over to yourselves.
Thank you very much indeed, Dean. That was very interesting indeed, and good to know what's happening. First of all, councillors. So, John, was that your hand up? It's gone. Any councillors with questions? Yes, I can see.
Yes, John Todd.
Okay, John, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that. Can you explain why you left it empty so long? In my view, Joe's the local councillor, as is the other two. It didn't enhance the business possibility of the adjacent shops. And secondly, I don't know whether you've seen Hounslow Council's proposals for that area. It's published at the Cabinet earlier this week. Perhaps you may not have seen it. I'm just curious whether you contributed to that.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. Firstly, we only acquired the site in September.
It was
so we've only recently, well, I say recently, within the last 6 months, acquired the site.
That's very clear. Thank you.
So that was the first bit. The second bit is in regards to Hounslow's paper. No, we weren't invited or asked to contribute to that.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Chair.
I did ask you in an email whether you'd seen that, so I'm very glad to have had that point answered. Thank you. Thank you, John. So I think Councillor Moshiso was next.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dean, for the presentation. I've got two questions really. The first one is to do with you said there was you're looking to offer these dwellings locally first. How do you intend to incentivize that? Because the feeling is, whoever offers the most amount of money in property often takes the property in question. So how will you be setting some incentives within your marketing strategy? The second point that we clearly haven't mentioned, maybe I've missed it, but parking facilities for families, because you're looking at over 140 units and there's no mention of parking. How are we looking to square that circle? Because obviously some people use cars to get around. So those are the two. But then the other point is also I know you've just taken on the site, but have you considered the pressures in the community as well? I know you've got Belmont School just around the corner. You've got St Mary's Primary School on the other side, which are the two big major ones, including Hogarth Primary School. What sort of people are you looking to bring families in, or is it young professionals, or is it nurses? Is it teachers, doctors? What sort of clientele are you targeting?
So just taking each part, Councillor Moshiso. when I was saying locally, and it's a good point you raise. So forgive me if it gets sort of sometimes things might get lost in translate. When I suggested that it was local, we're not. A lot of developments, as yourself and many others know, they're sort of taken to immediately overseas, and really, local people generally just don't, a lot of the time, don't get the opportunity to even look at an apartment, let alone acquire one. We've taken the decision that to start with, we are marketing this with I say a local bias, which means that we will have a retail marketing suite locally. We are to start with, we are not taking it overseas. Clearly, we need to see how the demand is generally. We don't have any what I would call positive. We don't have any incentives for local peoples per se to acquire the apartments, but as a marketing strategy, we are looking to try and really tap into the local market. Insofar as I think you were saying about parking facilities, as one of my slides previously might have shown, that it is very much a 1 and 2 bedroom home scheme, and so although one can never guarantee who's going to be there, I'm not sure how many families per se will be looking to acquire a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. I don't know, but probably not that many. The third point, insofar as the parking, that was a Hounslow requirement, because obviously the environment is extremely important, and so and this is the same across, I would say, all of the London boroughs. Is really, there is a very strong emphasis on cycling, public transport, and a move away from cars. So that's really that we have picked up that planning permission, but that's really why the scheme is the way it is.
Yeah, all our schemes have been car free for a long time now, or the majority have been car free. So it was imposed on you rather than anything else.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. So,
Councillor Biddulph, do you mind? Sorry, it's Grant Lipton. Just to aid answering one. Sorry, let me turn my camera on. Just to aid answering Dean's point on the on the marketing locally. For Councillor Moscone, one of the things that we did do was, as you'll see from the hoarding, there really is only our company name up there and nothing else currently. And we purposely held back putting anything further up because we knew locals would be the first people to see it. And we've actually had quite a few inquiries from locals, and they will be amongst the first that when we do release, as Dean said, towards the end of the first quarter, they will be the people that we'll be contacting first. So that they will, have the benefit of that.
Great, thank you very much. So
Chair,
I think,
can I just come back on that one? I think I understand what you're saying, but that's just, in my view, it's not necessarily meaning local. I think it's national rather than local, because you're not saying the way I see local to mean, as in within close proximity, as in Chiswick based or Hammersmith or Fulham. But what you're saying is, rather than international, we're going to be marketing regional, national sort of strategy. But I understand, but I wonder whether the word local is appropriate in this particular presentation.
Yes, no, you may be quite correct. Apologies. I think that Dean did express it how it is from our point of view.
Yeah.
But not going abroad in the first instance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Chiswick is an attractive place to people further away as well. Great, thank you. So Sam Hearn is next, I think.
If you'll excuse me, Chair, I can see a couple of local residents who do have questions. I wouldn't mind coming in at the end, but if time is short, and I think we should give priority.
Okay, lovely. So we'll take potential the presenters list. So I can see Mari's hand is up.
Yes, hello. You may remember we did have some discussions about 18 months ago, but I haven't heard from you since. I'm particularly interested in the environment of Essex Place because it sounds very fine, but you've got your townhouses there, but there's also the delivery yard for Sainsbury's and a whole lot of other things. And as already been mentioned, there is this sort of very vague proposals for the Sainsbury's site where they talk about widening Essex Place. But how would they be able to do that without demolishing your townhouses?
I think you're 100% right, Marie. They wouldn't be able to. Unfortunately, obviously we can only control what's within our ownership. The Sainsbury's goods yard and that entrance point onto Essex Place is really very much under the control of Sainsbury. And what we're trying to do is the bits of the areas that we own and that we can control, we're trying to make it as beautiful as possible. But as you say, the widening of Essex Place will be extremely difficult.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, because I remember the lovely artist's work produced for Lend-Lease, and it showed Essex Place as a play on the way with Jordan happily skipping and riding their mini bikes, forgetting about Sainsbury's. But also you mentioned at the moment it isn't a very pleasant cut through, but it is nevertheless a very important one, particularly for those of us that cycle. But I don't know whether it's your construction workers, but at the moment it's very difficult to walk and certainly to cycle to get to Sainsbury's because there's double and triple parking. So perhaps that's something you could address as well. I don't mean this evening, but perhaps you can try and sort that out.
Absolutely, and thank you for the feedback. As it's there's a lot of vehicle movements, and a lot of that has absolutely nothing to, unfortunately that's outside of our remit. But certainly insofar as construction traffic, construction logistics, we are very hot on it and we are very mindful of it at all times. So please rest assured we're very focused on that. Unfortunately, as you know, there are other shops and other along the parade and etc. where they have cars and they move things around, but certainly out of what we are able to control, we're certainly very mindful of that.
Sorry, could I just add one point to that as well, and that is I see that Empire House will be the final phase, and that won't be till the end of 2023. When you say Empire House, do you also mean the shop fronts either side of it?
Yes.
So that means we're going to be till the end of 2023 before any possibility of any occupation, because as somebody's already said, it's having a major negative impact on the businesses nearby because there's just no footfall down that end of the high street now.
Yeah, that's noted. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So sorry, David, I didn't see that your hand went up first. So David Lesniak.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you. A couple things. I want to say that unbeknownst to me, I was passing your Project Regions Crescent 5 times a week for the past 3 or 4 years. And I found it absolutely fascinating that was done with such incredible care and detail in this day and age. So it gives me great comfort to know that you're in town and doing a project for this community. But I want to know if Hounslow has been in touch with you with regard to their recent, I think it was announced today or it was approved earlier in the week, or maybe last week, with their redevelopment scheme right behind you on the Sainsbury's site, which kind of goes to Marie's question about the Essex Place access and just the character of it. And I asked that because, you know, one of the things I'd like to discuss when it is my turn is that there always seems to be this disconnect between Hounslow and what's going on. And here's a major opportunity to reinvent the center of town. And it seems like there might have been a missed opportunity at the same time. And just so you guys from Great Marlborough know, I have a shop on Chiswick Road further down the road. So there's always a lot of talk about making the center of Hounslow great, and part of this announcement was also creating a new corridor from Turnham Green to Heathfield Terrace, and all of that sucks the life out of the extreme bits of the high road. So I'm just kind of wondering if there's an opportunity also to work with you to develop something, again, which I can get to later, to connect the entirety of Chiswick High Road.
David would be delighted to talk, absolutely. I'm not sure how contact details are shared on the forum, but we're very happy to share and discuss, and we would love to hear your thoughts. And if there's something that we can do, then let's certainly have a chat. So yeah, no, that would be very welcome.
We can put you in touch with each other. And you're right, David, it's a point that was made slightly earlier by John Todd that Hounslow hasn't been in touch with Great Marlborough Estates about the development plans that it has for Sainsbury's, in which it says that it ought to be developed in connection with Empire House. So it's interesting that...
Yeah, so, you know, if this is a chance to ask the local councillors what they can do for us as a community and for these guys coming in and building the community,
yeah.
Where the hell is Hounslow? Where are they?
So here we are tonight. We're part of Hounslow.
Yeah, no, I know you guys, but it's just astonishing that they're not in touch with these guys who are investing huge sums of resources, and it's their backyard, for God's sakes, and no one knows what's happening.
Yeah,
not you guys, but like, where's the connection?
Sure, thanks for raising that. We're really running out of time, but I'm very conscious of the two members of people online who are trying to speak. David Blackburn, have you got a quickish question? And then also Pamela Mayorkas, just try to squeeze you both in. David, yes, lovely, thank you.
Right, the quick question is this. I have no issues with design of the development or with what you're trying to achieve. But one of the things that really annoys locals is that we don't want to get into a situation where we have too many dark windows at night. So you can't sell to people within the UK. 50% go to owners in Hong Kong who don't occupy. What benefit is there for us as Chiswick residents? None. We have people I know who moved to Chiswick because they're fed up with dark windows in Notting Hill and Chelsea. There probably isn't an answer to this, but because you're businessmen, you have to obviously sell your flats. But it is a real problem. Eventually, you have no community and that people won't buy your flats. If you've got a quick observation, that would be appreciated.
Thank you, David.
Just jumping in. Hi, it's Grant. I think I understand your point of view and exactly where you're coming from, but I think one of the points with this development is the majority are, as Dean explained earlier, 1- and 2-bedroom apartments, and the way we have looked at it and with the advice that we've received from our consultants and also, you know, talking to the local agents and some of the community as well, is that the general feeling was that a lot of this will be targeted. You're going to have, we feel you're going to have individuals, you're going to have newly marrieds, you're going to have young families, but there's going to be a lot of, from what I can't see the future, but the feeling very much is it's going to be more of a local, I'm using the word local here, Councillor, please forgive me, more of a local buy-in to this to some degree than what I think you see in other schemes and other locations, because of its location and because of its prominence within the area. And you're also possibly going to get some downsizers, some locals, some downsizers who, empty nesters who want to move into smaller units. So we're not envisaging. I haven't got a crystal ball, but that's not what we're envisaging. We're envisaging life and brightness and light.
Thank you very much. And Pamela, you've been waiting very patiently, and then we'll have to end this session, I'm afraid. Sorry.
Thank you very much. I can't see myself, and I don't know if you can see me, but that doesn't really matter. Yeah. I'll try to cover the points very quickly. First of all, yes, it is incredibly disappointing. In fact, it's daft that this whole block is being developed without there having been any integration whatsoever with the plan that the London Borough of Hounslow's Cabinet has just approved for reimagining the 4 town centres, one of which is Chiswick. And it isn't surely too late now for that to start happening. It seems to me that Great Marlborough on the one hand and London Borough Hounslow on the other hand have absolutely got to get together, sit down and work out what how this whole enormous development fits into the reimagining of Chiswick Town Centre. So that's point number 1. It's got to happen. Point number 2, talking about dark windows, it's a bit ironic really, isn't it? We don't want it to be a great empty tower block in the middle of Chiswick. On the other hand, we do want to see our night sky. Everybody's been going on about the wolf moon, the full moon, the last 2 or 3 days. We're not going to have any night sky anymore because we're going to have lights blazing across Turnham Green. I'd like to know how much S104, or as it's now known, SIL money, I think Great Marlborough is donating, giving, negotiating. You must have been in touch with the London Borough of Hounslow about that, if only to establish what the value of that pot is and whether that pot is going to be spent in Chiswick, because that's the idea of it. Another very important point is how much social housing. When Dean, I think it was talking about the various categories of apartment and housing, I don't think I heard the word social housing at all. There has to be social housing. We have a tremendous shortage of homes for families. The government, the London Mayor has stressed time and time again, we need homes for families. 1 and 2 bedroom apartments are not homes for families. And another thing I'd like to ask, if
I'm afraid we're not going to be able to take another question, Pamela. I'm sorry.
I would like to ask what is going to be the lowest price at which these apartments are going to be sold, because if they're upwards of £400,000-500,000, which I suspect is what they're going to be, then you are not going to get local people buying them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's obviously up to Grant and Dean to answer, but I would just like to stress that Great Marlborough brought a scheme that had been approved many years before, that was then in limbo whilst the community fought against any changes to it. So all arrangements, as I understand it, for social housing, for SIL, had already been set. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we should be ticking off Great Marlborough for some decisions that were made long before it had any connection with this site. And the same applies as well to, well, maybe that's all of the points, social housing, community infrastructure levy, and the contribution to the local area. Sorry, I don't want to intervene. Oh, and sorry, yes, the other one is collaborating with Hounslow over its new development plans. I don't think it's anything other than Hounslows' responsibility to get in touch with Great Marlborough Estates, which has been building here since it became the new owner of something that existed long before. But I don't want to preempt you. Sorry, Grant and Dean.
Joe,
mark on it.
Joe, I think we should say that the SIL is set according to a formula now, and it's very transparent. And a significant proportion of that, I've forgotten the exact percentage, has to be spent in the area in which the property is constructed. So that's really I mean, that's out there, that's public knowledge.
I know, my point was it's not a new question that is relevant.
Yeah. But if you want to know, I mean, we know what's happened in the past. Money has been raised on Section 106 and has been spent elsewhere in the borough, but we will have the reassurance that at least some of that money will be spent in Chiswick. Maybe a lot of it, but it's not really down to Great Marlborough. That's the formula set. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry to jump in, Dean and Grant. Would you like?
Well, I think Councillor Biddulph and Councillor Hearn, I think you've stolen my thunder, because that's exactly what I was going to say. And we're very much excited by this development, and we think it will really be something which we are very hopeful will be a really good addition to Chiswick and Chiswick High Road, and bring life back into that little stretch there, which I think is really, really important. So look, we as Councillor Biddulph has said, Grant and myself, we are here. We are real people. We are very happy to talk to people. So you know, please, happy to discuss if anybody's got any other questions. I'm mindful of time tonight for the forum, but you know, just we're here and always very happy to speak.
Absolutely. Just adding to that, Mr. Lesniak, if you want to talk, please, you know, pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Great.
With pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be in touch with Joe.
And that has been my experience, as I said at the beginning, of incredibly accessible and incredibly responsive, and I think incredibly responsible, but clearly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed for coming this evening. Really appreciate it. Thank you. So it's actually 8:30 and the rule is that we should go to the public forum now. I would quite like to proceed with the next section though, and I wonder how we can ask those attending if they're happy to do that. And certainly I should ask John and Chaspal as well, if that would be within the rules.
Yes, Chair, that's absolutely up to you. If you would like to continue with this, and then we'll just, after Mari's done her presentation, then we move into the public forum.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. I think we should just press on. So we're now coming to the third session in the Chiswick Community Matters section, and that is Mari, whose voice we've heard a couple of times already, but people didn't know who she was necessarily. She's from the West Chiswick and Gunnersby Society and has a specific area that the society works with, and she's going to talk to us about the life of the Gunnersby groundlings, a term I'm sure she'll explain. So over to you, Murray.
Good evening. I hope you can all hear me. I'm very happy to be talking to you. Only sorry that it's not in person. So as an introduction, am I able to move the slides, or is somebody going to do it for me?
I'll do that for you, Marie. Just tell me when you want me to move.
Next slide, please. So by way of introduction, like the Chiswick Lifeboat Station, we are 20. In fact, the society was 20 years old in December, but we didn't hold a party to celebrate. And so to set the scene, as it says on the label, our patch covers West Chiswick and Gunnersby, so you can see our society's patch on the map there. And it's a fascinating jigsaw of an area. It contains residential streets in 3 conservation areas, 4 pubs, two places of worship, a hotel, local shops and restaurants, offices including Power Road Estate and the Chiswick Business Park, next to a nature reserve, the Gunnersby Triangle, and last but not least, an infamous station and a sweet little flyover. So the society seeks wherever possible to address some of the tensions between these very different elements within the jigsaw to try and maintain a balance in order to preserve and enhance the quality of life of residents. Next slide, please. In order to do this, we therefore cover a wide range. Sorry, could somebody turn off?
Yes,
there's a lot of interference, please.
There is, yes.
Can somebody switch off there? Okay. Yeah. So we need to cover a wide range of activities, and we often work with other organisations. So in the time available, I'll just give you a flavour of some of these. But I do urge you to look at our website, which is westchiswickgs.org. There are some areas that I'm afraid are very out of date at the moment, but there is a lot of information there on all these issues. So do please look at our website and you'll be able to see. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Has something stuck or has...
I don't know. I'm asking for the next slide.
Yes,
we can see the planning development slide, Maury.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's fine now. Okay. Yeah, so planning and development, this is a major aspect of our activities because of the importance of planning policy in determining our environment, both built and natural, and because the development pressures across London, especially where we live, too close for comfort to the Great West Corridor and the Golden Mile. So we have to spend a lot of time interacting with all sorts of authorities. Obviously, one of the big issues is the local plan, which is Hounslow's responsibility, but we have the London plan, which is the GLA's responsibility, and the National Planning Policy Framework and other government-led initiatives. So we interact on all these. The current issue in terms of policy is the local plan reviews, and there are two of these, but the one that affects the Great West Corridor is the one that we're very much involved with. And that's got to the stage of what they call the examination in public, which is a bit like a public inquiry. And in November, I spent several days at the hearings. There will be more hearings and more consultation. But that is a major thing where we need to interact to try and make sure that the local policies are appropriate for our area. And then in terms of development, then development is responding to major developments, and this has been a feature of the Society since the beginning. Some of you may remember the saga of Chiswick West, which were the various schemes which would have seen our shops, some homes and the John Ball pub, now the Gunnersby, replaced by massive blocks. The final victory on this in January 2005 encouraged us to carry on. A more recent victory, with a little help from our friends, was the Chiswick Curve, but this has now morphed into Holly House, which to us appears to be more greenwash than holly and rather tall for a house at 101 metres. As our first chairman, Terry Thorne, would say, a luta continua, the struggle continues. We also take action on some seemingly small development proposals where these would have a negative impact on our conservation areas and on residents. These include inappropriate backland development, infills, and attempts to build on garden land within our conservation areas. And I know this is topical at the moment because of the recent decision about the 4 houses in the garden of a house in Hartington Road, which is not in our patch, but similar issues. Next slide, please. So another very important issue is transport, but I could spend the whole of the Chiswick Area Forum talking to you about Gunnersby Station, which is a very major issue on which we have been working for a long time. We've been actively engaged for over 12 years. And the thing is that Gunnersby Station is a major public transport hub. We have not just overground and underground, but we have a lot of bus routes, and it is simply not fit for purpose. And the need for significant improvements to the station is widely recognised, but solutions are beset by technical, financial and political obstacles and by the stakeholder complexities of ownership and management. Delivery of improvements is one of the inspector's questions concerning the local plan reviews of the Great West Corridor. And this demonstrates how by being at the examination in public, I was able to raise several points about Gunnersby Station to the inspectors, and it will form a part of their future hearings. So they are very well aware. But one of the big issues, as I said, is finances, but it is the complexity, because the station is owned by Network Rail, but it's managed by TfL. The surrounding land, the building and the car parks is owned by Hermes, and other stakeholders include the Chiswick Business Park, tenants of Chiswick Tower such as BSI, other businesses, Brentford Stadium, and last but not least, the local residents. But I mentioned on there the Gunnersby Station Action Team. Obviously, with the pandemic, has been difficult, but this is a team which involves all those stakeholders and is chaired by our MP, Ruth Cadbury, where we try and knock heads together and see some progress. So, and as you all know, it's the narrow two-way stairway to the single island platform that serves both underground and overground trains that is the pinch point, the constraint, rather than the station it's sort of self. What we would like to see, in fact, is to get one of the platforms back, because we think in this day and age, using what was once a platform as a car park for a business that is located above a station is not the way to go. But as I say, discussing Gunnersby Station is a big subject. So could I have the next slide, please? Right, now, heritage I want to spend a little time talking about, because sometimes people think of heritage as something rather academic and cold. But so why has the Society carried out a lot of work on heritage? Well, to try and sum it up, heritage is our inheritance. It is a visible link with our history. It connects us to where we live and contributes enormously to our collective sense of place. The townscape is where we live. It's our streets and homes. And when developers talk about impact of a development on receptors, the ultimate receptors are people, that is us. So right from the start, the Society took the initiative, which led to the establishment of the Wellesley Road and Thorny Hedge conservation areas and the westward extension of the Turnham Green conservation area. And we have continued to work constructively with conservation officers. For example, on the recent revision of these conservation area appraisals and of the Chiswick High Road conservation area. And it is a very important thing, because a conservation area, it doesn't stop development, but being in a conservation area, there are constraints. And it does mean that planning officers do have to take into account the character, the context, and all the benefits of the conservation areas. And I know some residents have negative views of conservation areas, but that's a lot due to misunderstandings about what you can and cannot do with your own homes in a conservation area. There are constraints, but for example, you can have an extension, a roof extension, provided it meets certain criteria. So those of you who hesitate, I would advise that it is a very good thing to be in a conservation area. And all Chiswick residents should be pleased and proud that Chiswick now has 116 entries in the updated council's local list, which was published in 2019. Our society certainly is very pleased and proud, as nearly all our 30 plus nominations were accepted. And it's a very good example of working together. We had a team of members researching buildings and other, it's not just buildings, but other parts of the built environment. And we cooperated with other groups and individuals. And I do advise you to look at the council's local list, and you'd be surprised of some of the places that are now in the local list. I mean, just in our area, the Pilot, a pub, the Gunnersby Baptist Church, the Russian Orthodox Church, Chiswick Library, well, that's in central Chiswick, Cafe Nero, the Chiswick Timeline. And that's interesting because that's a very new thing. So it doesn't have to be ancient. And the Russian Orthodox Cathedral is relatively new too. And we've covered things not just on our patch, but as you can see in the centre of Chiswick. And we also supported and endorsed the nominations from other groups. And you know, there is a lot of work that went into that, and I think it was very worthwhile, because there again, unlike a listed building, which is listed by Historic England, these are only local lists, but it tells you it's something that is important to the local character, and it is a material consideration in planning terms. So, and it just demonstrates that what a rich environment, a rich built environment we have. So I think, and you know, we can put forward more nominations, you, other residents in Chiswick. So, and these all feed into the context and character, and we were involved in the study of that some years ago. So next slide, please. Yeah, so another important thing is the street environment, and we do have a campaign called Green Up Gunnersby. There again, it's been somewhat impacted by the pandemic and by the resources we have available to us, but we are working to encourage residents and businesses to become more actively involved in making Gunnersby a greener, healthier place to be, because we believe if we all act at the local level to improve our streets, we could make a real difference. And we've carried out several projects, including our Meanwhile Garden. You can see 2 pictures of it there on the high road, but also various street planting. And here we've been much helped by abundance, particularly to give us confidence to do some guerrilla gardening. So the one of the tulips you can see there, or the poppies, sorry, the poppies were planted in a little strip outside an office block where they didn't do anything with it. So I'm afraid we just decided we'd plant it instead. Excuse me. So it's a good example of working together. It's something we'd like to do more of. And we have got some ideas. In fact, we're hoping to perhaps get a little grant to get some more planters. And we do see what others in the area are doing, like Abundance, and like Air Quality Brentford is another local group, one of our neighbouring groups that does a lot of great work around Brentford. And of course, we do litter picking, and there we've been working with Ron Mushy Show on some of his litter picks and doing our patch. So next one, please. Yeah, so as I've mentioned, I think it's one of the most positive aspects of what we do. And we do work with a lot of other people, and we take a lively interest in our surroundings and our neighbours, not just in other parts of Chiswick, but in Brentford, in Kew and further afield. So in terms of near neighbours, particularly on development issues, we've been working closely with some other Chiswick resident groups. We've worked with Brentford, what was the Brentford Community Council, now Brentford Voice, and the Kew Society. So we've worked closely with them, sharing ideas and problems. On a borough-wide basis, we were one of the initial members of what's now called G15+. We started, I think, as about 5 or 6, but we couldn't keep changing our name every time we got more resident groups involved. So that's why we're G15+. And these involve resident groups across the borough, and it's an informal umbrella. But there's also the Resident Association Forum that meets, I think it's every 2 months or quarterly, which is run by the council, and we contribute to that very much. So this is where we debate things, policies, particularly planning issues, but not just planning issues. We sometimes have people like Hounslow Highways come and talk to us. And then on a London-wide basis, our society is part of the London Forum, and this is the London Forum of Civic Societies. So it covers the whole of London. And particularly when the government is proposing new things relating to planning, it's a very good forum to be able to discuss these things and gain from the experience of other groups throughout London. And last slide, I think. Right, so you may be asking, why did I call it the Gunnersby Groundlings? Well, we've come full circle, so to speak, to the Chiswick roundabout and the flyover, because while developers and landowners may, in quotes, one of them, may wish to pay respect to the flyover and celebrate the surrounding grand urban gesture with tall buildings and big LED-lit adverts, those of us who live below do not want this to be the defining feature of our neighbourhood. And the picture there, if ever you walk across the Chiswick roundabout, you'll be familiar with this sign. And it's a quote from Jane Mansfield when she opened the flyover in 1959. And she said, "It's a sweet little flyover." She was probably comparing it to those in the States. So the Gunnersby groundlings, we are the lowly folk who live below, and we know what happens at ground level. And it's not good enough just to address what it looks like from the people flying overhead on the flyover on the M4. And you may have also wondered why our logo is a Viking longship. If you saw on my first few slides, I had our logo. Well, it's there in miniature. Our logo is a Viking longship. Well, partly because Gunnersby is a Viking name based on, they think, on Gunhilda, who I believe was some relative of Canute, but also because we're warriors. But unlike the Vikings, we're busy fighting off the invaders. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mary. That was extremely helpful. And I think you've been quite subtle in the way that you've demonstrated the level of expertise and knowledge that you have on how to influence and lobby on local issues. And although you explained at the end, I wanted to thank you for the smile at the reminder of the sweet little flyover as well. So let's go to questions. I can see Councillor Moshiso's hand has gone up. You're on mute.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you, Marie. Again, obviously, I just want to commend you for your hard work on the West Chiswick and Gunnersby Society. And you mentioned quite a few bits, including the heritage items, which we discuss in many of the meetings that we have held. And you've invited us to attend, the three councillors in Turnham Green, Councillor Gill, Bidoff and myself. The question it was always on the back of my mind when I knew you were coming to this presentation, it hasn't changed really, was, in fact, you kind of summed it up at the end there, saying that you're keeping threats away, and you've done a really good job there, especially around Chiswick Curve and so on, and Holly House. But what invaders are we willing to accept? Is there a prerequisite that we, as an area, are accepting of, or are we, because of the heritage and the history of some of the places in the area, that we basically say no to all invaders?
Well, it's a good question, but if we consider it appropriate development, we wouldn't regard them as invaders, I guess is the quick answer. But we don't have like a specific height at one time we used to talk about, but it depends exactly where it is. So a lot depends on the context, and we don't object to all development. We support some. A recent one we supported, although this isn't a new building, but we're very supportive of the move of the University of the American University of Richmond that's going to be occupying one of the buildings in the Chiswick Business Park, because we think that will be a good synergy and it will be good for local people as well as for the business park. And obviously we want to see the business park succeed, and we don't know post-pandemic quite, how that will be. But in a more general sense, it is all to do with the context and the impact it will have. We want new buildings that are of high quality architecturally, but that respect their place. So, I mean, to take the Chiswick Curve, putting a 120-metre building just across the roundabout from 2 or 3 story Victorian terraces, that is not paying respect to the environment. And of course, there is the impact on the conservation areas. And it's not just our own patch, but, we all love the river. We walk down to Strand on the Green, so we care about what impact it has on that. We visit Kew Gardens. Actually, personally, I'm a patron of Kew Gardens. So the impact on Kew is something we look at. So we don't start by saying no. And the other thing is, it's not black and white. We know that, you know, we can object to things, but our objections can be overruled. But what you can try and do is get some changes and some compromises, and they may seem small. But for example, you know, there's a new car showroom, relatively new, the Citroën DS Peugeot one on the corner. Well, yes, it's a new building, it's a bit in your face, but like everything around there, they want to appeal to the M4. But we did get some changes to that. We got them to do the top floor is actually set back. And you wouldn't believe this, but they were going to have about 16 major flagpoles all around it, advertising the different cars. We managed to stop that. So we got some improvement to the landscaping, although I've seen lately they're driving the cars over it. So that's not going to be very good. But so it isn't black and white, and you have to be as constructive as you can. And when you do object, you have to object in planning terms. It's no good just saying we don't like it, or I don't want that in my back garden. So you have to choose your battles and try and see a way through. But just finally, one of the biggest issues we have at the moment, and where we've been objecting to some of these big developments, like the 4th mile that's just been approved, is the lack of space and the lack of open space. You know, you get a huge development, hundreds of flats, and there is totally insufficient outdoor space. On the 4th mile, the 2 Larch Drive development, it's got less than 50% of what the policy says it should have. And they all say, oh, well, it's all right because Gunnersby Park is near, but everybody is offloading it all to Gunnersby Park. So now there are thousands of units going up in East Brentford. And they're all saying, oh, well, the children can go to Gunnersby Park, or, you know, so that is a very big issue.
Thank you, Marie. And if I could just add to that, the other issue with the open space at the 4th mile is that most of it is public open space, which is going to be used in conjunction with exhibitions and not for the residents. The residents have been limited to little fringe verges around the side of it, which is unacceptable in my terms. Thank you again. I can't see any other hands up. Does anybody want to intervene at this point? The only other point I'd make as well, Marie, is I didn't find Citroën Peugeot anything like as in your face as Shergard. It looks as if it's going to be. I don't know if you've responded to that application yet.
Sorry, is it this the storage facility on Gunnersby Avenue? No, we're about to. But, you know, on the one hand, we're pleased that it's not residential because we think that's a very inappropriate place for residential. But we would, that's a case of not saying don't build it, but can we have some improvement to it? But I do wonder, I mean, I don't know whether you've noticed, not just in our part of London, but across London, there are more and more of these storage facilities being built. And I think the reason why, or one of the reasons why, is because the residential units that are being built are so small that people have no room to store anything. And if you look at the size of some of them that are now allowed by prior approval because of the government's changes to the planning rules, you'd probably be better off living in your storage unit and putting your bits and pieces in your so-called studio flat.
Indeed. And of course, as you mentioned with another development, Shergard's very much further out. I have objected to it for various reasons, and you've mentioned a lot of them. The lights, of course, are on full blast throughout the night. It's advertising. It's further forward on the road, it's higher up, and it's lit up because it's trying to get the advertising. So, anyway, thank you very much indeed. So we'll now move to the public forum. I'm so sorry that it's taken us so long to get there. Thank you, Marie, very much.
Thank you, Marie. It was really good.
This is the chance that everybody has who's attending. Sam's hand up has just gone up to ask questions of councillors directly. So it's a councillor resident business exchange. Please, would you do as has been happening up till now, raise your hands, and then I will look out for who it is who wants to ask questions. And when you raise your hands, please could you unmute yourself? We will enable that behind the scenes because at the moment everybody is on mute. And give your name and any other information that might help us know who you are, such as whether you represent any other groups, or if you like to tell us which part of Chiswick you live in, that would be great. But before we take that, we've got one presenter already raring to go to help us into this next phase, and that is Tim Mack, who would like to update us on his campaign, IRIS, which is Identify and Report Irrelevant Signage, of which we are blighted. So, Tim, over to you.
Yeah, thanks for booking us a slot. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. So we are Team IRIS, Identify and Report Irrelevant Signage, doing the best we can to combat a surge in signage in Chiswick. And you would have seen that the New Year edition of Chiswick W4 reported that we'd like residents to make a New Year resolution to act and sign up for the Fix My Street app to report street clutter and rubbish. Since launching this campaign at the Area Forum of October, we have made over 100 reports of abandoned signage, barriers and bollards in Chiswick and nearby. And we know that rubbish attracts rubbish, and the quicker it is removed, the less other rubbish will be left there. So by way of an update and a call to action, hopefully we're going to be able to share 4 groups of 3 or 4 photos each with the help of Chasbal. And I'm going to talk through each of those photos, groups of photos in 4 sections, 1 to 4. So I'm hoping we can start with a picture of the Fix My Street app and then go into the first 3 photos, if that's possible, Chasbal, please.
Now, can you see that now on your screen?
No.
I can't, which is why I was sort of pausing.
Okay.
I'm just going to say, just to make this easier for everybody, if it takes a long time to load these photos up, I think I can. Oh, hang on, here we go. Brilliant, brilliant, yeah.
Coming soon. We've got your photo, John. Here we go.
Yes,
lovely.
That's good. Unfortunately, that's the wrong photo.
What would you like?
The photos we actually wanted were in the first email, but I think what I'm going to do. Yeah, go back. Brilliant. That's fantastic. This was just how I hoped it would work. So what we've got in the first section of 3 photos, which I've called thanks, is 3 examples. Only see 2 at the moment, but these are 3 examples of where items have been reported and removed very quickly by Hounslow Highways. So the thanks is to Fix My Street, to Hounslow Highways, and all the residents who've joined in reporting, as well as thanks to Chiswick W4, who've published several updates for us. Many streets have been cleared of old signage, etc., but it keeps coming back and keeps getting left behind, especially after major works. And we have found that almost, you know that as soon as any major works finish, there's going to be 2 or 3 of these items just left there for someone else to come and pick up. And I note also that the council has recently declared an objective to remove street clutter. So the next set of photos, hopefully, are items. Yes, brilliant. Those 2 are fantastic. These are items left behind after something has been reported and removed. So these are both examples of where a barrier or another sign was removed from literally on top of what's been left behind or right beside it. So, of course, the only choice at the moment is to go back and report what's been left behind. Next group of photos is kind of around A roads. That's great. And around A roads, we found that TfL are not as responsive as Hounslow Highways. I'll give you a ridiculous example. Many of you will know that Harvard Road runs alongside the A4. If you report something on the far side of Harvard Road, Hounslow highways pick it up pretty quickly. If you go to the other side next to the A4, you get overwhelmed with messages from Hounslow and TfL arguing about who is responsible. I'd also go on to say that the worst example, the iris black spot of Chiswick, as far as we can see, is what you're looking at now, which is the junction of Sutton Court Road with the A4, where there are, you can see old poles with no signs on them. There's a couple of frames that used to have a sign on them. There's plenty of barriers, and sometimes these barriers have been less than 10 foot from other barriers or bollards that have already been reported. So I'm kind of thinking that if we can take an action on one black spot and do it properly, we might actually have a method we could apply elsewhere. But the really, really frustrating thing about this junction as an example is that plenty of people have reported plenty of these signs, barriers, bollards and poles, and nothing's happened. So it's going to discourage people from doing the good work of reporting again. So fourth and final group is we're just moving on to fly posting. Oh, a couple of old barriers from Sutton Court Road there, and indeed a bit of fly posting from Sutton Court Road and the A4. Move on to a few more of the photos if you would, that's great. So what we're finding with fly posting is it's significantly on the increase. That may be the times we live in, but often what happens is it's left behind after the event that it's trying to promote. And that, of course, assumes it was allowed to be there in the first place. And the kind of thing that we've got in the pictures are planning applications. These things are left stuck on posts for years, to public sales, to events. Groups from Chiswick House to the council don't clear up. And those are some of the photos that we're rolling through now. That's a Chiswick House Christmas poster. And earlier you actually saw a wraparound from the council that promoted a voucher scheme that ended on the December 24th and Christmas. Now, what I would say is some local groups are really good at clearing up. The folks doing the high road markets put up their banners and posters and take them down really quickly because they obviously know where they are, and that's all part of the plan. So just in closing, I'd like to echo the thanks to Councillor Mashiso and his group for the clear up. And we're suggesting that we might link up with him to see how we can achieve the best effect for Chiswick. And that would include asking Hounslow Highways when they're picking up to pick up anything else within, say, 20 feet of the report to make sure they take everything. And as I say, I think there's a lot of learning out of the Sutton Court Road A4 junction, where because of TfL and Hounslow Highways confusion, loads of reports are getting ignored. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim, and for drawing attention to what I think annoys an awful lot of people. I don't know if anybody has any questions for Tim. I can't see any hands up. Any councillors with questions?
No, just thank you, Tim, for doing this.
Okay, so there is a hand up.
Any comments welcome, and I can pick them up with Councillor Mashiso.
Yeah. Okay, so I can see a guest has a hand up. I can't tell whether that is Proctor Frost or Frost Proctor. But if that's you, can the team unmute you so you can speak?
Yes, thank you.
And if you could say your name and where, if you represent another group or are from a part of Chiswick, that would be very helpful. But you're still muted, so I think, are you able to unmute yourself? Yep, there you go.
Muted? Yes, sorry. James Frost, Merton Avenue. I have a question for the councillors Turnham Green and Turnham Green Terrace on the police station. Recently, the Hounslow Council published a town centre development guide for the centre of Chiswick and had a number of recommendations to how Chiswick could be more successful, et cetera, et cetera. And nowhere in this guide was a major property called the Chiswick Police Station. The Chiswick Police Station, my understanding, will be up for auction and sale by the police department, and it is at the center of the Chiswick, really the center of the Chiswick town center. What actions are going to be taken to make sure that this redevelopment of the police station are in fact conducive to a better community atmosphere, better community facilities, better community central sort of organization and place recognition?
Thank you very much. Did you say his first name was James?
James, that's correct.
James, thank you very much. Thanks, James. So I don't know if others would like to say something. The latest information I have as one of the 3 councillors for Turnham Green Ward with Ranjit Gill and Ron Mashiso is that it is going through the sale procedure now. And
that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
And the police station is, the police are based in Acton at the moment, which is, you know, seems to be working according to our local police unit. And they do respond to all calls from the locals in Turnham Green or in Chiswick. And so far they don't seem to have any problems. So as far as the sale is concerned, as you said, it is going ahead. So.
And I guess it falls into the same place as other developments, which is it's privately owned. It's not owned by the council.
Correct.
So the council can only try to influence. And at what point that would be, whether there is an application put in to change it, develop it, knock it down, upgrade it, build on top of it. That I think is when those questions will arise. But others,
we have raised with the Hounslow Council that we have some local-based police, either in Sainsbury's or in the town hall. But so far, we have not been successful in getting a local-based area for police.
That's a slightly different issue. I agree with you. We also, very early on, that was one of the questions I went to Great Marlborough Estates about, was whether it would be able to accommodate in one of the retail units at the bottom 2 famous local important resources. One was the post office and the other was the police station. And I don't know if they're still with us, but they were very receptive to those ideas. They liked doing that. But it's not up to us. I know that the Met decides where the police go.
Correct.
And the sub-postmaster will have to decide whether he's going to give up his job or transfer to other sites. But the issue about the building is that it's at the next stage, I think, that the questions that you're concerned about will be raised. But it is interesting, I agree with you, that it's not mentioned in the document that was published last week at the Cabinet and approved on Tuesday. It mentioned the post office, but not the police station. So maybe they know something that we don't. I'm sorry, that's probably not a very helpful reply, James.
No. Marie's got her hand up.
Yes, if I could comment, I think it's probably because the vacation of the police station has been a relatively recent development, because normally a site like that, if the council knew it was a possibility, it would have a site allocation for it. But as far as I remember, in the local plan review, where they have all the site allocations, I don't think there is one for the police station. But so we could perhaps ask the council, I don't know whether it's possible for them to, you know, the site allocation is where they put their kind of wishes as to what might be developed there. Not that having a site allocation, I mean, if you look at the site allocation that still exists for Empire House, what is being built bears no relationship to what the site allocation was.
Thank you. It was listed as an opportunity development on a plan that Hounslow discussed, I think, in 2019. I remember going to a briefing about that, and it was on the plan in grey, as was the post office, as was the car park above Gunnersby Station, and so on. So something must have happened between that optimistic intervention.
I'm just not sure. I'd have to look at the site allocations to see whether it's there or not. But if there is a site allocation, we could perhaps make some comment on that. I mean, perhaps we could be proactive and say, you know, what sort of thing we would like to see there.
Yeah. Thank you. So Councillor Hearn has his hand up.
To go back to Tim Mack's presentation, have you noticed, Tim? You've been talking about Hounslow highways, but have you been noticing, as I have, a lot of white paint which Hounslow highways put down, and then they don't do the repair? I think that possibly links to your where they don't pick stuff up when it's kind of bleeding obvious that there's some work that needs doing. They come round and put the paint down and then don't do the work.
We decided to try and keep our focus, but we have noticed the white paint. And another thing that is happening more and more is, for example, someone reports that a pavement slab is out of line, even if it's right on the edge of the pavement. And so, for good reason possibly, the council will put a great big plastic barrier there and often tape it to the hedge or fence nearby, job done. And that stays there for ages. But the trouble is, folks walking past, not many, but a few folks walking past that barrier will see it as an invitation to dump their rubbish. So again, quick repair, or maybe something smaller to stop folks picking up. But yes, that paint's going to take a lot of shifting, which is why we tried to focus on the left behind signage, etc.
Thank you.
Indeed, thanks. Any other questions?
Chair, I believe Mr. Frost Proctor wanted to come back.
Okay. James, would you like to come back? Can the team please unmute James Frost?
He is unmuted. James, you just need to unmute yourself.
You've done it. Thank you very much.
I simply would like to ask the council representatives, to take a more proactive stance on the police station. It's immaterial whether there's a police station going to be there or not. That has nothing to do with what I'm asking about. What I'm asking about is, what can the council representatives do to make the redevelopment of the police station turn into a prominent civic asset in the center of Chiswick? What can you do to, and who can you ask to say, we would like to see this, we would like to see public space, we would like to see comprehensive planning, we'd like to see landscaping, we'd like to see public gathering acknowledged, we'd like to see the integration of that space with the parking lot and no parking lot, or whatever it might be, with the new bike lanes, with the streets in and out. It's not too big an ask to go proactive. And I've found that if one doesn't ask, one never gets.
I agree with you, and I have noted down that what we must do is to find out the status of it at the moment and then intervene if we can.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we will. Sam, did you want to add something?
I think you've covered it.
Okay.
Councillor Biddulph. I mean, it's just, as you originally said, I mean, it is a private property. We can indicate that we really don't have community assets anymore. They've all been sold off. I mean, we had a wonderful community centre that was sold off so the council could pocket £1 million. I just don't think whether the money is there or the inclination is there to actually give us civic assets. So we have to work with private owners and try and integrate things where it makes sense, if that helps.
Indeed, there was also a question about ownership for a long time, and I'm still not clear on that. But certainly we've taken your point, James, and we'll do what we can. Could you email one of us or all three of us, councillors, and with your email address so we can be in touch with you?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. So it's always first name dot last name at hounslow.gov.uk. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions in the public forum? I can't see any. So in which case we'll move, and thank you very much for waiting, to the two presenters that we've got this evening in the next big section, which is Chiswick Future. And the subject this time is supporting our retail and hospitality economy. Unfortunately, the second presenter on the list, Paul Fitzgerald of PR Hair on Strand on the Green, can no longer be with us. He has had a rent demand, which is so difficult that he's having to work as long as he can do to anticipate that big bill that he's going to have. However, we do have two very well-known and long-standing traders from Chiswick with us, and they will outline to us the challenges they face as they recover from the pandemic, and in particular how the council impacts on their business and what it can do to help them succeed. So first, we'll go to Councillor Hendesi of Lizard Fashion on Turnham Green Terrace. Welcome, Councillor, and thank you for waiting, and thank you for agreeing to take part. It's over to you now, and we're very interested in what you've got to say.
Thanks very much. Basically, for the shopping street to thrive, we need attraction, variety of shops, and easy access. At the moment, we are having disproportionate number of estate agents on a very small stretch of street, i.e. Turnham Green Terrace. There are about 11 of them out of 65 retail units and 5 charity shops. Together, they constitute about 25% of the whole entire retail space on a very small road. It doesn't really make it a very attractive road to go to carry out, for shoppers to go. There is not enough variety of shops, and particularly the charity shops bear no contribution whatsoever, and the estate agents, they bear no contribution to the trade. And in fact, the charity shops, they actually are becoming a threat to businesses like mine, because they're offering nearly new clothes for very little money, and it's actually becoming a threat. The suggestion I can make is completely halting the issue of further licenses to estate agents by the council and imposing a rate increase for them, and also introducing same commercial rates as all the others, all of us that we pay. For the charity shops, the earning that they are making, from what I hear, is well over 500,000 per unit, and their directors are on 5-figure salaries at some places. So to make it an even game, then they should be subjected to commercial rates the same as us. Now, to make the area also more attractive, the idea that came to my mind was what I saw in areas like Shoreditch and Old Street, where you had lunchtime food, street food caterers operating, and it added a huge buzz to the area. You know, we have the green outside the Turnham Green Station that they could operate. Only in the lunchtime areas, council could issue licenses for them, and in the park, in the Turnham Green Park, where the big church is, be ideal space for them, and it would add a huge buzz to the area, which we really badly need at the moment. The other problem we are facing is the old subject of huge unsustainable rent increases we are facing. It's artificially hiked up by the commercial agents, And it's resulting in many shops remaining empty for well over 18 months. It doesn't make the area attractive at all. The suggestion that I could make to tackle that would be to the council introducing a surcharge for retail units remaining empty over possibly 1 year or less, or 8 months, and further increasing it if it's not let, because these landlords are holding on to these units empty to achieve much higher rent than everybody else is paying, resulting in hiking the rents up. By that method, council could put a cap on it and force them into accepting lower rents, lower offers from interested parties. The next issue that we have a problem with is the old issue, such as the parking. It's been going on for years. On Turnham Green Terrace, we have 3 disabled spaces, hardly used, and 2 loading spaces that are hardly used. A council could easily reduce these to 1 disabled space for the disabled and 1 loading space, and possibly putting a time slot on the loading space where between say 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock loading can take place, and the rest would be pay and display. Also increasing the 30 minutes to 1 hour for free parking. That would allow the shoppers sufficient time to do a reasonable amount of shopping and relieve them of the unnecessary stress of getting back quickly and moving cars and etc. etc. Above all, we need a multi-story car parking facility. It's been talked about for many years. Council has never taken it seriously, but it is very, very badly needed. I know that we are all pushing for the society to move into riding bikes and be more green, but you know, we have electric cars, everybody moving towards electric cars. The cars are not going to go away. We need a multi-story. Richmond has it, Ealing has it, Kensington and Hammersmith has it. The only area right in the middle is Chiswick. We don't have it. When are we going to have it? It's access, and it's not happening. We have unacceptable level of traffic jams created by the introduction of the cycling highway. That is insufficiently used by the cyclists. There's few cyclists on it. Every time I have walked across, most of my customers who I've talked to, they have not witnessed many cyclists on it. Why not reversing, merging the bus and the normal traffic lane to bus and cycle lane? That way, then you will release these traffic jams, and the buses won't hold the traffic back when they stop to load passengers.
Combis, I'm really sorry. I've just got to interrupt you for a moment. It's 9:28, and there's a regulation through which says that meetings must end at 9:30 unless we alter that.
Yes.
So could I just explain? I'm not stopping you. It is just interrupting. We need to, because this is an online meeting, we can't make a decision at it. So to suspend standing orders is also a decision we can't make. So what I propose to do, what we will now do, is to move away from the formal meeting, which will therefore end, and it'll just carry on, but be an informal meeting. So I hope that is okay, and we can just carry on smoothly with that, as I understand it.
Yeah. Well, more or less, I was at the end of it.
No, I didn't know. Please carry on. I just had to do it before 9:30. That's the only thing. So please carry on.
Yeah. And then we have a sewage problem. It's an unbearable smell popping up almost on a weekly basis, indoor and outdoor. And we need an overall sewage system, to be done. It's been overdue for many years. And then finally, instead of awarding cash grants, maybe providing grants for training in marketing, using various marketing channels such as digital marketing, and improving online presence for retailers, various digital marketing.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I've
Sorry.
said really.
So did you say that was it?
That's it, really.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And you covered an awful lot of subjects there. I'm sure that there's going to be agreement with an awful lot of them and perhaps not with some of them. Can I have, somebody's got their hands up, can I take questions first from councillors? And I can't, so I don't think there are any, so yes, I think Ron, you are the first.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Biz. Yeah, there were some really interesting ideas there. I mean, that's something that we as councillors have been, some of them I completely agree with, like reintroducing free parking. An hour, I think it's a big call, but at least bringing back 30-minute parking is something that we have been calling for and would call for again if we elect in 2022.
It has been. We have got it back on Turnham Green Terrace, and Devonshire Road, but
yeah. But what you're presenting here is exactly why I think the purpose of this area forum. I think these are the sort of ideas that we should be listening to you on, and I think the council should be listening to you on. And unfortunately, a lot of the really good ideas are falling on deaf ears because, as you saw, we've got a reimagined high street with very little consultation with you, so some really interesting ideas, and I really think that the one bit I disagree with is agents. I think there is some really good agents in Chiswick who, for example, commercial agents who are keen to sort of, bring those prices down and negotiate their way down. I speak of Whitmans, for example, who are working quite closely in the area. But that's the only bit of contention I disagree with you on. But there's so many other interesting ideas, and I think we would love to have these in sort of some form of written form, hopefully in the minutes, and we can really start looking at chasing them up.
Yeah, I mean, the state agency, they obviously, they are there for a purpose, and they do serve a very good purpose. But it is a concentration of them in one particular small street that is causing the problem. I have nothing against the state agents, but it is constituting a huge part of the street where it is reducing the variety of the shops. And that is the problem.
Yeah, and then I think you're absolutely right. And I put my hand up. I used to be one of those estate agents back in for Town Ends in Turnham Green many moons ago. But also the charity shops. I think this is more of a national issue. I think the levelling up agenda, perhaps under Michael Gove, is something that perhaps that's the remit that where that kind of reaches is not within our powers, I think, to sort of, I don't know if my more senior colleagues could perhaps correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but it does sound unfair, but it's something that probably comes more centrally than a local level.
Thank you, Ron. Sam, your hand is up.
You did raise an awful lot, Cambies. I mean, we're not going to cover it all tonight. As Ron says, there's a lot that's not strictly within our control. I don't think that shops like local estate agencies actually require licenses to operate. So we couldn't control a shop if a 12th or 13th estate agent wanted to set up, it's the mechanism that we would control that if we were to try and stop it. And I just don't think that's in our hands. With the charity shops, it's a double-edged sword. No one likes to see empty shops, and charities often will step in when a landlord is having difficulty in renting a premises, or at least that was traditionally the case. It is frustrating if you're competing head on. I quite understand that if you're selling the same or very similar product. And it's an anomaly, but it's not something a local authority can actually operate on, again, as I understand it. What we need is more sensitive legislation at a national level. And I think you do have this trade-off that the charity shops can actually be keeping the high street alive. In London, the charity shops are somewhere around 6% of retail stores by area, I think, and that's down on the national average. But there will be places where it's just there's nothing else but charity shops, and you've got to wonder then whether are we looking at the market being overprovided with retail premises? If those charity shops weren't there, would that automatically mean that there would be another private business in there? I just offer those thoughts. But it is difficult for us as councillors. We might want to ask for the moon, but it has to be deliverable, or we shouldn't be telling you things that are possible if we can't do them.
Yes. No, I mean, it's a problem that I highlighted, but I didn't know what was possible within the council's controls and ability to be able to impose commercial rates on.
We can't impose higher rates on a business because we don't like it. I mean, that would be very arbitrary. Yeah. If it was the case. Yeah.
Yeah.
It may be
that there is a possibility that things could be changed for the charity sector. I think that's what Cambies means, is why do they get so many breaks?
Yeah.
And also on the estate agents, I was under the impression that they do need a license to operate as an A3.
Well, they need to be the right category, but those have been relaxed. I mean, Councillor Todd has got his hand up. He's much more knowledgeable than I am about this. It's not a matter of a license, but it's whether you can do certain types of business in certain areas.
Yeah. Thanks. Just to add one point, which is about charity shops, and that is a common complaint, is that they bring no footfall for ordinary shops because they're people who want to spend very little money, and that's the difficulty. So I understand in your case that you might have a competitor, but it's also that they don't bring footfall of people who are spending. But John, Councillor Todd would like to speak.
Well, I find that comment a bit speculative, Joe, with respect. There's some incredible bargains in some of these shops. I'll just make a couple of points if I could. I'm not a planning expert. I was aware at one stage we successfully opposed yet a further estate agent in Turnham Green. Now, I'm going back, Joe, and that may be old legislation, but I know that there was some sort of prescription. More importantly, I'm better informed on charity shops. My understanding is the council negotiates with the shop as to the level of rates it pays, which gives it an advantage. It was going to be correlated with, I think someone mentioned it, I think Mr. Lambie has mentioned a huge turnover. But I do, as I understand it, I'm repeating myself now, the council does have some discretion as to the percentage of rates they charge. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other councillors with comments? David, I go to presenters next. David, would you like to comment, or would you rather wait for your session? It's entirely up to you. You're mute.
Why does she always choose him first?
No, I did explain, Pamela, that I go in the order of councillors, presenters, and then members of the public, and I'm so sorry that it means that you're last, but that is what we have been doing in these area forums. David Lesniak, has that worked, David? Are you now unmute? No. Unmute?
I can unmute.
Yes, I just heard you.
You just put yourself back on mute. If you just unmute and wait a second, I think there might be a little bit of a delay of the button reacting. Okay, it's not. Do you want to try it again? Not sure what's happening. There we go. That's it.
So, Joe, take Pamela's question.
Okay, thank you.
I have a chance to speak, and she's clearly got her nose out of joint. So.
Okay, thank you. So, Pamela, if you'd like to go next.
Thank you. It's not a question, it's a suggestion which I've been making to the local authority for ever such a long time. Well, one is that there is a massive, massive unused car park at the back of the BSI building. I grant you it's not in central Chiswick, but it's not that far away. And there are at least 3 buses, I think, that pass on both sides of the road to take you to and from the very centre of Chiswick to that car park. You can see it if you use Gunnersby railway station. I reckon there are something like 400 car spaces there. I can see Marie looking slightly dubious. She might not like this suggestion because it could mean an awful lot more cars going up that section of Chiswick High Road, turning in and out. But it does seem ridiculous that there's this vast, vast, empty concrete space behind that building. And in fact, there is another way of getting into it. And it could serve as a Chiswick Town Centre car park. The other thing is that I, again, have written to the council about this recently. The council is now back in charge of the town hall. It was sort of rented out to Fusion, which was providing leisure services in the area. The area behind the town hall, again, has a lot of car parking. It is not an official car park. I often walk through it as a cut through back home from the high road, and there are as many as 12 to 20 cars parked in that space. I reckon the space for 40 cars. That could be a very, very reasonable short-term, maximum 2-hour stay car park, which would serve as a car park for the people in Chiswick who seem to think that they cannot shop without having 4 wheels. I am being a bit sarcastic, sorry. I do tend to walk everywhere or take the bus. But there are opportunities in and around Chiswick for town centre car parks, but we need to create an awareness of them, and we need to try to talk to the local authority about bringing them into use as town centre car parks. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Pamela. Sorry you had to wait. Just as an aside, but I'll bring, if Murray does have her hand up, I can bring her in here. But just to let you know that the Gunnersby Station car park is marked as a development opportunity and is being marketed as such. So you can expect something to be built on it that will be, you'll be glad to know, cycle only.
It's been empty for donkey's years.
Well, we can't change that.
So has Empire House.
We can't change that, though. Murray, did you have something to add to that with your hand up?
I do. I'm very familiar with the car park. I agree with Pamela, it's underused, but it's owned by Hermes, the owner of Chiswick Tower. It's leased to tenants such as BSI. And if it's now down under development because part of the car park may be needed to provide the enabling development when they do something to the station. Yeah. Because even with whatever Section 106 money, other monies that we have for the station, it's going to be totally inadequate. So they're going to rely on Hermes building a major development, partly on the car park possibly, in order to pay for the improvements to the station. So that's where we are. And as I say, this is something that is being discussed at the examination in public by the inspectors, because it has major implications for the local plan, whether they can actually get something happening to the station or not. So, you know, find some other space, but it, you know, it would require a compulsory purchase order to acquire the car park from Hermes. And I don't think the council has the money. And if it did, it would be using it, as I say, to improve the station, as I say, give us one of our platforms back. If you look at old photos of Gunnersby Station, it used to have 3 or more platforms. And when the station was engulfed by Chiswick Tower, the platforms became the car parks.
Sure. Thank you very much. And we'll take up, one of us will take up, one of the councillors for Turnham Green Ward will take up the question about the Town Hall car park. That may well also be spaces that are allocated to services that operate from there, like the Citizens Advice Bureau, and it might be that they have to be available for whenever there's an event on. They have to offer car parking perhaps to people holding events, but we'll certainly ask that question and let you know, Pamela. Okay, I think I'm going to have to move on now. Sam, is your question about in response to Camby's, and John the same? Because we would need to allow David to speak.
Let David speak.
John, are you happy with that? Or is your point in relation to what Camby's has said?
Sorry, Joe, that's a mistake.
Okay.
Hello? I do apologise. Yeah.
That's all right.
I do apologise.
Right, so moving on then to our second speaker. Thank you very much, and sorry to have kept you waiting as well, David. David Lesniak is of Outsider Tart, which is on Chiswick High Road on the corner of Chiswick Lane. And it's been there for a long, long time, supplying us with American-style brownies and other deliciousnesses, and with some special events as well. David, thank you, and over to you.
Sorry, David, I can see that your mic is on mute again.
How strange.
You're still on mute, David.
Yeah, he's trying to unmute it.
Okay, it's gone. So we'll just try speaking.
And can others go on to mute so that we don't get feedback?
Okay. We've been there 14 years, so we've watched a couple different permutations of things. I'm not really sure where to begin. There's a few things.
Hang on a second, David. There's a lot of breaking up, and I don't know.
Both know in terms of escalating.
Hang on, David. David, it's breaking up very badly. David, it's breaking up. You're breaking up. So let's just try and sort the technical problem out. I don't know what it might be. Is everybody else is on mute? Is the tech team able? It's David. It's your connection, apparently, David. Does it look as if it's a poor connection? Does it look as if it's a poor connection? Well, your voice, that's Sonia, your voice was breaking up as well.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what's going on. I'm literally not touching anything.
Yeah.
No, so one of the things we've been having an issue with during, attempted recovery in the hospitality industry, in our neck of the woods, we've got an escalating issue of antisocial behavior, which has escalated into homophobia, which the police know about. So I'd be curious to see if Ranjit can hook something up there with Catherine Dunn, who hasn't responded to an email. And she's in charge of communities, and she's been dealing with the gay community in Brentford, but doesn't seem to want to deal with the gay community in Chiswick. That's item number 1. Item number 2 would be looking out for things like licensing fee increases. We know that they're due to expire in September, which is the second year of COVID-related outdoor seating license fees. If they go back to normal, many of the businesses can't do that. We've seen lots of initiatives in Hounslow focusing on outdoor seating on Devonshire Road, but once we turn off of Devonshire Road, they don't seem to care. That gets me to parking. Other areas in the council have enjoyed 30-minute free parking. Places like Grove Park have not. Places like Chiswick Lane have not. The other end of the high road up by Marie have not. So I'm just wondering, if we're going to look at the recovery for all businesses, why would it not be that we have that opportunity for 30-minute free parking everywhere? With regard to Pamela's comment about car parks in, the outer fringes of the borough servicing all of the borough, I don't think she fully understands how urban planning works. I see in the newly released plan from Hounslow for the redevelopment of the Sainsbury site, there seems to be a car park there. The question would be how big and how many cars. That gets me to, has Hounslow done a parking survey like they have done in Brentford, where they have 512 new parking spaces in a multi-story car park? So I don't think parking is necessarily the be-all and end-all, but I do think it's part of a balanced equation, which Hounslow itself has just admitted should be the case in their current proposal. So where is that parking survey? How many spaces are there? How many spaces will there be? Where will they be? How will the entire community access them? That gets me to the urban planning in general. We've been working with Sibyl Khan and Wayne Stevenson on trying to regenerate our little, not just our patch, but as the progress progresses, the patch grows and grows, but to bring some green initiatives to Chiswick Road, which again align with their newly announced plans. And it just, what always kind of kills me about these things, we're always told. We are never asked. We are always told what we will be doing or what we should do or how we should do it. Not how's it going? What do you need? Does that work? Doesn't it work? Why doesn't it work? And even this most recent proposal that, the Sainsbury proposal developed by an estate agent of Chiswick. I find that a little bit odd. But be that as it may, we've already discussed that with the Great Marlborough Estate presentation. It's just baffling that they're not engaging with the community that they're looking to develop. So, those are kind of all of my issues. And just one last thing, which goes to Camby's. I think you're making a mistake there by encouraging a food market when you have struggling hospitality businesses right out the door. So that's about it.
Sorry, Captain Bidoff, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't. Your voice faded just at the end there, David. So I'm not sure if Camby's heard what you said, but it was the point about street stalls, which every time there's a street stall in the high road, a food business feels the effect of it, and it's a negative effect. So whilst it might help you or generate footfall for you, it's going to make it difficult for others. So there has to be a balance between that.
Yes, and if I can just offer an example, we have businesses down near us that are closed, hospitality businesses closed on Sundays, which is when we see these markets. So I ask you, why would it be that a recovering hospitality business would opt to close on a Sunday when we're always, again, told that these markets are great for trade? They don't make those decisions lightly as independents. So if they've opted to close on a Sunday when we're told that we get great footfall and great increase in trade, you got to ask yourself, really? Is that true?
Well, I mean, what I noticed in Old Street and in Whitechapel in the Shoreditch area, that all the restaurants were operating successfully, and alongside, and these were the street traders who attracted a lot of people into the area, and it added a lot of buzz to the area.
Okay, well, Kambiz, with all due respect, I'd like to hear from the councillors, but I will ask you this question. As part of a scheme for regenerating the high road, would you welcome a proposal for, let's say, a fashion market that would directly compete with your business?
No, I would encourage that, because it would draw footfall into the area and it would increase variety. I have no problem with that.
Oh, okay.
The problem with the charity shop is that because they are standing on an unfair competition, and they're not paying any rates, and getting their clothes free, and inviting low-spending footfall, which does not benefit us.
We understand the point about charity shops entirely. It is. I can just tell you is that when a street stall opens, I get complaints in my email box galore, and the effect can be quite widespread. When one opened in front of the Chiswick Business Park, for example, there's feedback. I don't know if it's affecting everything, but when one opened there, businesses right up to beyond the junction with HSBC, HBC and Sainsbury's felt a hit. There's some terrible feedback. And when the stall opened outside, Savers, cafes there complained that they'd lost trade, and so it goes on. So it may well be, I don't know what the makeup of Shoreditch is. Do they have as many restaurants and cafes as we do? Do they have the same sort of people walking to and from, whatever it happens to be? Plus, at the moment, the lunchtime trade is almost, well, it's fallen away. And there was there was something being discussed late last week, which illustrated that enormously. Oh, it was the Betty's application. Betty's is trying really hard to win some lunchtime trade because it has just dropped away with people working from home and people who are here working from home going to their fridge. The officers have gone and we've gone to our fridge. So it's a very delicate balance, and it will have to be something that is looked at. Can I just comment? I can see Gabriella would like to speak. With 30-minute stop and shop parking, we've called for that so many times on every single shopping road throughout the whole of Chiswick. There was a list of all the roads where we thought it should be introduced in the retail report that we produced in July 2020, I think it was, 2020. So we're completely in favour of improving parking. I agree with you about the parking on Turnham Green Terrace, too many disabled bays, too many loading bays, and in the wrong places, both of these. Nobody wants to stop people who are disabled and have blue badges from parking, but they can already park on any free park, in any fee-paid parking spot, and on yellows, single and double. And to have them all in front of one stretch of shops makes no sense whatsoever. So you've got our support on that. A parking audit, that was a good idea. We were told very glibly when Turnham Green Terrace was closed and that sudden dramatic effect that happened, the changes that happened everywhere. We got a very glib answer from the Transport Department with the total number of parking spaces that there are in Chiswick. It wasn't balanced by the number of people who have parking permits, so how many of those parking spaces were already taken up. And there's no point in offering a car parking space right down on the corner of where the Russian Orthodox Church is if you want to go to outside a Tard. There's absolutely no point at all. So we need a proper audit in relation to where it's needed. And I think those are just the three quick points I wanted to make. And I'll go now to Councillor Giles.
Well, I think Councillor Moshiso had his hand up first.
Yeah, I couldn't see that. Ron, would you like to speak?
No, thank you, David. Thank you so much for your presentation and discussion. I don't like to disagree, but I think the footfall argument that Camby's was mentioning is quite pertinent one. I mean, I'm not a business owner, but I've been at some of those markets where we've had, even on rainy days, 7,000 to 8,000 people coming through those turnstiles. I don't think it immediately impacts positively, perhaps, on businesses, but in the long run, when we're getting this consistent footfalls, is a good advert for Chiswick, and I think it would wash over. And the other thing to remember is these grouped markets, they finish about 3 o'clock, I believe, is the latest one. So if businesses are operating on Sunday beyond the 3 p.m., I can see why the lunchtime business would fall. But after 3 p.m., when the other markets are closed, I think this is an opportunity for us to perhaps take advantage of. And I do think that these stores do advertise other businesses as well. But I take your point that, if a business is closing down, I'm not a business owner myself, but if there's businesses closing down on a Sunday because of footfall, yes, it needs to be investigated. And I would love to actually hear exactly what their reasoning or their beliefs are as to why that's closed. And maybe there's something we can do to help that work. Because the other thing about the markets is you can give away flyers through the organisers for different businesses if you can negotiate with the organisers.
No, Ron, what should be happening with that market, any of those markets, is they should be promoting the entire town. There should be a map provided showing the businesses at every single corner of Chiswick. Because what it's doing now is nothing more than promoting the businesses in the dead center of town. That's what it's doing.
I take your point on that.
You have a connection with that market. Yes. You need to capitalize that and work with your colleagues in your ward and in Homefield's ward and in Riverside ward. And they need to deliver what they technically promised in their presentation that they would do. And they have failed to do it. It's been a year on, and we have not seen the promise delivered upon. You need to get out little corner and see what the impact is elsewhere. It is one Hounslow, it is one Chiswick, but it acts like 12.
You make a very valid point, and that's something I can follow up with those two businesses that I'm aware, those two organisers that I'm aware of.
Just to add to that, David, I've tried very hard to produce the map of the 350 businesses that are in the Chiswick Shops Task Force list, and had a terrible, catastrophic, had somebody working on it, had a catastrophic data failure where everything was lost and apparently nobody had backed it up, and I don't know who was to blame. I didn't touch a keyboard. But that is, I've got all the data. It can be inputted. I need a tech and a designer. That's what I need.
So, Ron, maybe you can work with Councillor Biddulph on that, and you can put together a team with the people at the market who have the ability to do just that and to distribute it to the 7,000 people that you're telling us come to those markets.
David, as far as I'm aware, there is no objections for the people that run Chiswick Flower Market and Chiswick Cheese Market to promote the businesses in Chiswick. I have never come across any of the organisers who say, actually, let's not promote this business or that business. It just needs a conversation.
They haven't promoted business, Ron. That's the problem. They have not promoted local businesses. That is what they promised to do, but that is not what they have done.
Yeah.
If you can produce a physical flyer that they have produced doing exactly that, I will take back that comment. But you can't, and I know you can't. Everyone on this screen knows you can't.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So, David, if we take that position can I come back? If we take that position of nothing's going to happen, then of course nothing is going to happen. But what I'm saying to you now is what you're telling me. Let me take that away speak to those businesses and let's have an open mind on this. That's all I'm asking. And I take your point. Let's have an open mind.
Okay, so let's put a timeline on it. How long should I have an open mind for? It's been a year. That's pretty open. How much longer?
I think that's quite unfair to sort of say what timelines you want to give me.
We've been, hospitality businesses and business in general in Chiswick have been struggling for 2 years. 2 years. We do not have the time. We are all exhausted from reinventing ourselves on a daily basis to keep the doors open and the lights on. And I have no clue what's going to happen with rates. I have no clue what's going to happen with rents. And I don't know what's going to happen with licensing fees. And you're telling me I have to be patient. You know what? We've been patient.
I haven't said be patient. I've said
I'm asking you for a timeline, and you should be able to say, I'll be back in touch with you in a week or 2 weeks max.
I can be in touch with you tomorrow.
That would be fine.
But not with an answer. Okay, we'll come back to you, David. And the only thing that's stopping me from doing the map that the Chiswick Shops Task Force has been trying to do is about £5,000. So if the council is flinging money around, it can fling it in the task force's direction and we can get the map up very, very quickly. Ranjit, your hand is up. Councillor Gill. You're on mute.
Sorry, I thought Councillor Giles was before me.
Yeah, my points have been covered and I'm not going to add anything of value given the hour at this time.
Oh, right. Okay, sorry. Yeah, David, I will be in touch with Catherine Dunn on the point you raised, and I'll be in touch with you on the subject so I know exactly what we're covering. Okay.
That would be great too. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anybody in sorry, it's terrible feedback, which is why I keep stopping. Any of the other presenters who would like to ask questions of David? And if not, people attending? No, is that it? Well, thank you both very much indeed. And I'm sorry we didn't have a third person, but that was nevertheless a very interesting spread and divergence of opinions and an awful lot for us to do, I think. We can pick up on, did I mention this already? We can pick up on the sewage point and all the practical points that you've raised. We can take those away with us and come back to you on the bigger issues, as we've said already. So that's not quite the end of the meeting, I'm afraid, because we have one other subject to look at. And as I said earlier, that we can no longer make decisions. Under the previous agenda, which we're now not able to follow, there was a section called urgent business, where people can raise with us something that they want us to take up very urgently, but that's a decision-making point. And we're now not in decision-making mode because virtual meetings can't make decisions. But we have had a motion put to the councillors for us to talk about. So we will do that now. We haven't been able to post it on a piece of paper, so all councillors have it either in an email. Councillor Giles has very kindly put it into the group WhatsApp, so you can all look at it there. But I will read it out for the benefit of everybody else. And it has been submitted by One Chiswick, which you might all know from the very long-standing and effective work on road changes. One Chiswick asks the Chiswick Area Forum to support its residents and businesses in their objection to the implementation of the Hounslow street space measures against the democratic will of local residents, as clearly demonstrated in repeated council and TfL consultations and surveys, which consistently show over 80% of residents expressing opposition against all restrictions, and ask for Council Leader Steve Curran and his cabinet to meet with local residents and reverse these schemes. So we can't end this meeting by saying that we support it or not, because that would be making a decision. We can indicate our comments and speak on it. So is there anybody who would like to start the ball rolling? and I can't see. I thought there was one councillor who was keen, but I can't see him suddenly. Is Councillor Hearn still here?
Councillor Hearn's hand is up.
You want me to start?
I was asking you if you would like to start.
I mean, there's so much to say about this motion, but I'm largely in support of it, apart from the last 3 words, because I think we need to be talking. Residents need to have the opportunity to be able to talk to Councillor Curran, the leader, and his cabinet members, so that they can understand the situation in the different parts of Chiswick. And certainly south of the A4, what councillors want and what residents want are modifications, significant modifications to the schemes that have been imposed. And as the motion says, you know, most of what's been proposed and implemented by Hounslow Council and is going to be made permanent is not supported by the vast majority of residents who've responded. So we're baffled, really, as to why Hounslow Council persists in this way. But we don't want everything removed. But we would like to be able to. We would like residents to be able to express their views directly, and for things which are not supported and have no evidence behind them to be removed or to be seriously modified. So I can support most of this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Gill, your hand is up. Is that for this motion or?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Well, I concur with what Councillor Hearn has just said, and I think it's only fair that the leader and the cabinet members do actually come and listen to the residents of Chiswick, because at the end of the day, it's affecting their lives. And as responsible individuals, elected councillors, we should listen to our residents, and that's why we've been elected by them, and we have to represent them. And it's only fair that Steve Curran, the leader, and his cabinet are accountable to the residents of Chiswick, like they're accountable to the rest of the residents of Hounslow. So I think it's only fair that they do come and meet the residents and hear their views in person before making any reversals or any adjustments to the schemes. And if schemes are not working, then they should be removed. And if that's what the residents want, then please do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gill. So next is Councillor Childs.
I think that what's very interesting to me is the fact that we were told that these were brought in via experimental orders. And for me, for something to be truly experimental, it means that you should work a combination of different solutions in a consistent and thorough positioning where you only change one variable at a time, because that would be a experimental scientific approach in order to ascertain what's gone on. What I think I find quite interesting is I wouldn't say just interesting, but quite disappointing in this whole process is the fact that the lead members who are responsible for this haven't really engaged at a local position, and they've relinquished their roles to officers from within the council who are then responsible for undertaking those discussions and unfortunately fulfilling receiving a huge amount of correspondence as a result of the inaction of those who have actually made these changes. So I think this is a very interesting motion, and certainly one that merits full review and discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Mashiso.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at the WhatsApp message of the motion, and you know, it's very awkward for even someone like me who cycles around a fair bit, that it seems the council's just trying to make life unpleasant for and inconvenient for many residents whilst implementing some of the schemes. I mean, some of the schemes actually do work. There are some functions in a few of them, and that's the reality. But when you speak to, I mean, I've got a lady that I'm talking to at the moment as a casework on Barrowgate Road, and she's completely at wit's end about how to access Grove Park Primary School when she's coming over from her workplace in Richmond. She then has to join the traffic flow on the A4 all the way back on towards Saturn Court Road in order to filter back in and to go and pick up her children. And she only lives across the other side of the A4. They're just making really, really inconvenient decisions that are hurting quite a number of residents. So I'm looking to see where we can find middle grounds, where you can work with officers and with lead councillors. And every single turn, we've reached a dead end. And I really do fear that with PERDA imminent, any possibility of us actually getting anything through is now made even more difficult. So, yeah, I think this is something that we need to back our residents with. And I speak with a very heavy heart because someone who loves cycling, and I think we've just ruined it for quite a few people just for, I'm not sure what, something I can say off the record perhaps, but something that some of the ideas are just nonsensical in many ways. So, yeah, so I do support mostly in what this statement says.
Ron, I would just say that if you're having any issues explaining, please feel free to pass anybody on to me and I can help them.
No, I'm fine
with some
dealing
of these
with it.
measures.
It's just, I'm just saying the difficulty of there's inconvenience this is making for our residents. But I'm fine dealing with it.
It was fascinating, Gabriella. Just as an aside, Ron actually asked me for guidance on this, and it's so typical of so many, literally hundreds of emails we've received, that this lady leads a specific life, deals with her children in a specific way, works in a specific place, and the scheme messes up her life. And so many of the things we've had, and those have been forwarded on to the people making the decisions in Hounslow, and we just get these pathetic comments back which do not deal with people's personal circumstances.
Yeah, Sam, I completely agree with that, because I think, I was speaking to the heads of Strand on the Green schools, and they're really struggling, and it becomes a recruitment issues as well. And this is actually really impacting the ability to deliver services and good level services to the residents and those who benefit the most from some of the public amenities in the ward and in the area. And again, it's not understanding that there have been teachers who've been at that school for 20 years who've relied on their cars, and it's just becoming very, very hard to make sure that those teachers are looked after for.
And
I'm agreeing with you on this. And
we see David Lesniak's left the meeting, but there are several hospitality businesses in our ward in Riverside where
well, we've all seen that Annie's is going to be moving to the high road because, again, it's not just about the trade that's coming in or unable to come in. It's also about safety of individuals and staff, and unable to get home, and taxis dropping off people at the ends of streets after they've been to appointments because the taxis refuse to go down certain roads. And not taking into consideration deliveries and handymen and staff and all the rest of it that people have coming in and out of their homes to give assistance.
Sorry, Sam, you got.
I was just going to say, could we move to vote at some stage on this?
No, we can't. We can't vote in this meeting.
Or defer. But I think if we could have some kind of show of hands that we don't accept the motion as it stands.
Well, I haven't said anything yet, Sam. So
if you let me finish, Joe, because we've been talking about the issues, at some stage we need to talk about this wording. I mentioned the last three words. I realise there are other people who will want to speak, but that's what all I wanted to say. We can't, in my view, it would be wrong to accept the last three words in the motion.
Thank you. I got that point. And that was what I wanted to come back on, because clearly this motion has been written by people for whom those three words are important. So there is a difference of opinion in Chiswick. And I remember two things. First of all, I know that the majority of people who've contacted me in Turnham Green Ward have said vehemently they want to access every road in Chiswick. And it may be, again, that we're dealing with a situation of people inside a low traffic neighbourhood who like what they have and are therefore want to keep it. But we have to bear in mind that this is a much wider issue than only Riverside Ward. And the second thing that makes me concerned about that is when I came to the public meeting that was held, John Todd organised it at the cricket club, I think. I can't remember when it was. And Gabriella spoke, I spoke, various people spoke, I can't remember who, and I made that exact point, which is that an awful lot of people think that everybody who lives in a Chiswick ward should have access to all the roads in a Chiswick ward. There was a huge amount of applause for what I said.
Well,
so, Joe, can I please finish, Sam? Please.
Well, you're saying things that are not right, because everyone has access to all the roads.
No, but not, they want to be able to use them for their own ways. I understand that, but I don't think we should preempt this. You're trying to pigeonhole something which I think there's another option for, and that is that if we want Steve Curran and his cabinet to meet with local residents, you've got a difficulty with the last three words. What about if we were to say something like, to determine, and obviously they've got to have a proper public consultation, it seems to me, to determine whether schemes should be modified or reversed. That's a middle ground.
Well, before I was stopped in my tracks, I was going to suggest a modification. Your suggestion is perfectly fine with me.
Thanks. I was just concerned that you were coming to the
end. I thought you said we weren't going to be able to vote on this, but
we're not. I'm still making an earlier point. The reason why I wanted to stop you was because you were coming to the conclusion before everybody had spoken. That was my point. You were saying this is what we should.
I was saying I wanted us to focus on that, and then other people come in. The other thing I would like to throw in, if I can, Joe, is we've been made aware of a scheme in South Fulham, which is very similar to ours. But despite what we've been told by the Hounslow Council, it allows everyone in Hammersmith and Fulham to drive into that area. And the stats show that there's been a dramatic decrease in the rat running through that ward. We need to get through to Hounslow Council that you can allow full access to residents of an area, however you define that, and have a dramatic decrease in the rat running. So I think exactly that point you raise, that people north of the A4 are concerned they can't get to their dentist or their doctor or visit a pub,
or their mother or
their school or whatever.
Yeah.
That if Hammersmith and Fulham can do it,
yes,
and be satisfied with the result, then, and presumably TfL also accepted that, then why can't our council? What's wrong with these guys?
And we do have to remember that part of the issues, as I understand it, in the South Chiswick area are to do with Hammersmith Bridge. And we don't know whether there are going to be compromises on that to come and whether that will shift as well. But we've, in order to tackle a much wider London problem, we've created a much bigger local problem. That's the point, I think.
And we don't know where we'll be when COVID sorts itself out, when people go back on public transport, etc., etc.
Right, exactly.
And yet schemes are being made permanent in my ward this month.
Yes.
Schemes which should not be made permanent yet.
Yeah. And that's an important point too. And meanwhile, other boroughs are starting to rip out their low traffic neighbourhoods. Brent, I don't know what the decision there, but was considering removing 5. So I think we can't make a decision in this meeting, but I think what we can conclude is that we've almost reached a form of words that would, I hope, satisfy the residents who have submitted it, which is that we should have proper consultation speak to the leader or have the leader and his relevant cabinet people come to meet local residents. That might mean several meetings to get different views and to allow numerous different types of people to attend at different times of the day, etc. And then run a consultation to determine whether schemes need to be modified or reversed. And if you can live with that ending rather than just say you don't agree with reversal, then we may have something that we can take away and discuss and raise directly with the cabinet. and Steve Curran. Does that sound like a good plan? I can't ask for a vote because this isn't a decision-making meeting.
No, I think we can leave that as it is for the moment, Joe.
Okay, and nobody else wanted to comment?
No.
No. Okay, so I think we've reached a point that there is something that we can take away to look at and agree on outside this meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're really at the end. Does anybody have any other business that they wish to raise? I don't think we're allowed to do that, actually.
No, we're not allowed.
So it's just to say that I can't give you the date of the next meeting because it will be after the local elections on the 5th of May, and I don't think dates have been set, but officers can leap in and correct me if that's correct. So I'd just like to thank everybody again for attending, particularly those who presented to us. We've had some really top-notch presentations from people who really know their stuff. Everybody has spoken from the heart and with a great deal of knowledge. We will follow up with answers to questions that haven't been answered yet. And that's the end of the meeting then. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Good night, everyone.
Remembering.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Bye.